Welcome to the Durham Town Council meeting of May 4th, 2026. We'll have a call to order. Councilor Grant.
Heather Grant.
Joe Friedman.
Mike Lerner.
Jim Lawson.
Cardin Welsh.
Curtis Register.
And I'm Todd Sellig, the administrator, all right. And then there's no one on Zoom?
We'll have to ask DCAT. I don't know.
All right, just heard a no, so we're good there. And now for approval of agenda. I think we have a suggestion for that agenda from Councilor Lawson.
Yeah, maybe before there's a motion. At the last meeting, we agreed to defer item D, continued discussion regarding town council appointments to boards and committees, to a future meeting, which would have been tonight. So I'm recommending that we add that to new business, which is item 15, and make it B.
And that was 12 last time, 12B, was it? D? I have it here.
I think so.
Yeah. It was 12D last time, so we'll make a motion to approve the agenda with that addition to number 15B.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Maybe by a show of hands, then we could approve the agenda. Agenda is approved then with that addition. We have a special announcement tonight and a recognition of Councilor Robin Vogt. Thank you, Robin, for being here and for serving the time that you've served. And we'll go up to the podium there. We have a certificate. Certificate of appreciation. We do appreciate it, and what it says is presented this 4th day of May 2026 for a certificate of appreciation for Robin Vogt in recognition of your commitment and immeasurable contributions and service to the citizens of the town of Durham spanning 1 year in the following capacities. Durham Town Council as a member, the Energy Committee as our council rep, and the Human Rights Commission as our council rep. On behalf of myself and other fellow council members, we sincerely hope you will remember with fondness those fellow citizens and employees whom you met and worked with along the way, and will take with you the gratitude and appreciation of the Durham community for the year of dedicated public service and the efforts you provided for its betterment.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you for all of your help.
Appreciate it.
And
Thank you.
best of luck to you in your future and your career.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Just want to say first, thank you to everybody here on this council. I've gotten to know many of you on a very personal level here, and getting to work tightly with you around different issues, whether that's with the Human Rights Commission, with our ICE resources, or whether that's around some other community items, housing, stuff happening in faculty neighborhoods. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much. I've learned so much along the way from all of you. And I feel like I'll be taking so much of that learning with me wherever the four winds may take my entire family. So really appreciate that. And second thing I want to mention here too is to the folks here in Durham. You should absolutely, one of the reasons why I stepped up to run for town council in the first place was not just because of my past legislative service in my previous town of Portsmouth, but was also because I saw the hope that Durham could bring to this community, and the folks here in the council and folks in the community that are willing to speak up and to see a better Durham. So I highly encourage everybody who's watching and listening, please step up, have your voice be heard, and don't be afraid to be here in council chambers and utilize that skill that you have. So I want to thank you all, and hope to see you around very soon here.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, Robin, I heard from my wife, first of all, I heard from my wife that you have a skill that we never saw here, that you're quite the artist.
Oh,
that
thank
you
you.
did some very good work with the Land Stewardship Subcommittee, and she said, "Can't leave now. We haven't finalized it."
Well, I had a fantastic meeting with Neil Slepian the other day, and one of the things I told him was, as long as my 2 feet are planted in Durham, you have a graphic designer to be able to utilize. So
Oh,
if I
excellent.
can continue to provide
Excellent. Well,
services.
I'll pass
whenever-
that on.
Yeah, please do.
Very good.
So, yeah. Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Robin. And by our town charter, it's now our obligation to appoint a new counselor. And so we'll have a discussion, a selection, and a swearing in of a new counselor, if we should have one. Counselor Welsh?
Yes, I would like to nominate Jay Goose for council to replace Robin. Jay was elected to the council twice by the citizens of the town. He served the town in many ways, we all know. He was on the council twice. He was elected to the chair of the council. He was the head of the ZBA. He was on the ZBA for quite a bit of time. And he's kind of a neighborhood guy. He helped raise the money for what I call the new library. It's a little bit older now, but he was on the group that raised money for that. He was the doctor for the UNH hockey team, traveled with them for a while. And he's volunteered unbelievable amount of hours to the police and to the IT here in town. So he's really just been a of great service to the town. Now, he has a great background. Before moving to Durham, he served in the Army. He was a major. He then moved to Rochester, where he was on the Chamber of Commerce, and he was on the board of the YMCA. So he had a lot of sort of good experience, good town work, and then he moved here in 1979 with his kids, and his kids all went to Oyster River. So he has a really good idea of the town and of the school, and we've talked about how the two need to talk to each other more. On the financial side, which is sort of near and dear to my heart, he has a BA in economics, and he ran the budgeting, the forecasting, and all the financial work for his own practice for many years. And when I think about it, I just think we really can't find a better counselor to help us at this time than Jay Goose.
Is there a second?
Was that actually a motion?
He did make
Yes.
well, he nominated him, but, so we may accept other nominations, but is there a second for this nomination?
I'll second that.
Okay. Did you want to say something as well, Councilor Lawson?
Yeah, I served with Dr. Goose on the council for 5 years, including 2 of the 3 years that he was chair. I admired Jay because of his commitment to neighborhoods and the residents, address some really decaying and inadequate infrastructure. And I always respected and appreciated that Jay, he would disagree with you, but Jay was never disagreeable. And he always tried to achieve compromises and consensus. And that's where I really took to heart and learned that sometimes really consensus and compromise is the better solution than the one that maybe you brought forward. So I would look forward, if possible, to serving with Jay again.
I see Mr. Goose in the audience. Would you like to say anything?
Do you want me to?
You don't have to.
I'd be, I've got a lot of things going on. As you know, I volunteer at the IT department pretty much 4 days a week. But I really care very deeply about this town. I think the fiscal headwinds that we have facing us are significant. And I really would like to work with this council to figure out what we can do to help us. I just want to say one thing, that this is a very diverse town. We have a group of people who live on the bay, and they really don't use the town itself very much. We have a group of people who are very rural, and they want to keep it that way. And we have people like me who live in the small neighborhoods right around the university, really came to Durham for that reason, to be in a small town community, but to be close to university. It's a diverse group of people, and therefore we're not going to please everybody, no matter what we decide to do. And I want people to be aware of it. If I'm on the council, I may make some votes. It doesn't mean that I'll win those votes. That will not please everybody. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
I would just like to say that I also agree with the suggestion of Jay, just because I think it's important right now that we have somebody that has previous experience on the town boards. And I appreciate that Jeff Berlin put in his application, but I think at this point, my choice would be somebody that's already had that level of experience, similar to what happened when we brought it the other year. So I think that that's to me the reason why it makes sense. So.
Are there any other comments?
Sure. I'll give my perspective on Jay as well. I've worked in passing with him as I've seen him be in multiple locations seemingly at the same time, helping out the town for low or no cost, and in a fiscally austere environment. It's nice to see people showing up to help just for the sake of helping. I don't agree with Jay on some things, particularly height limits and the densification of housing, and I think those are issues that are going to be more and more pressing as we come into our, this ridiculous fiscal season, particularly as we go from 27 to 28. But I do respect his service, whether it was to this country or to the state or to the town. And I think he has a good head on his shoulders. I think he's a reasonable human being that uses intellect and facts to make decisions and works with as many people as he can to benefit the best for as many people as possible. And so I'm very honored to have the opportunity to potentially serve with him here. One clarification, is it for 1 year or 2 years?
It is for until the next full election, so it's 1 year, essentially.
Okay, so
just
1
less
year.
than one.
Yeah,
Just
so
less
if there
than
are other
one.
individuals in town that desire to fill that vacancy, March 2027. Start planning your move now to get your voice heard if you want to get on the council or if you want to impact the vote. I'd highly encourage you because our current fiscal problems aren't going to get fixed in 1 year. And so we need to continue driving forward in addition to all the other life challenges that happen as it comes with manpower, personnel services, new and old people, students. It's all going to composite together, and we need good, wholehearted, kind individuals that care about this town and care about their neighbors to step up and serve, like Jay Goose.
Councilor Friedrichs?
I want to say as well that I also had the pleasure of working with Mr. Goose in a subcommittee and appreciated both the institutional knowledge that he brought to that in terms of really knowing law and rules both at the state level and within Durham. It was very useful, and his willingness to think outside of the box, which I think is also needed. And just in terms of precedent, I'm really glad that we, opened up the call to all applicants. I do think there is a lot of sense in terms of getting somebody on board who has already had orientation, who understands how the council operates, and not having to explain those processes again, given it's a short year. It makes a lot of sense to look towards a pool of past councilors if someone steps forward. And I do think that I'm glad that we opened up the announcement and let people know, but I do think there's an advantage to working with someone who knows how the council operates and is ready to get going from the beginning and has won the public trust in an election in the past. And so I feel good about how this process has unfolded. And I encourage people who are interested to, of course, run in March if they would like to be a candidate then.
All right. Any other comments? Well, we have a motion and a second, so we'll go ahead and vote then. Councilor Grant.
Heather Grant, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Mike Lehrman, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Well, congratulations, Mr. Goose, and we all appreciate you volunteered to do this, and you've been now appointed by the board and will be sworn in by our town clerk, Rachel Dean, who is here.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Richard.
It's an honor to swear in Dr. Goose. Have you raised your right hand, sir, and state your name?
Jay Goose.
Do you solemnly swear that you will bear faith and true allegiance to the United States of America and the state of New Hampshire, and will support the constitutions thereof? Do you solemnly and sincerely swear and affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a town councillor according to the best of your abilities, agreeable to the rules and regulations of the Constitution and the laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to have you sign your oath of office. You can sign right there, Jay.
There you go. Okay.
Well, if you're willing to join us tonight, we have a name tag. You have more than one.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Joe, thank you. All right, thank you. Shucks.
Again, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Jeff Berlin for putting in his application, and understand as well that there was further interest, and appreciate that as well. Hang on a second. Further interest from Mr. Peter Ventura. So, welcome, Jay, and we will move on then. At this point, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 20th, 2026. As presented. Councilor Welch?
Second.
Are there any comments or corrections, amendments?
Yeah, I have one
Yes?
on page 7, line 37. The chair called for a vote, and it says that I'm the only person who voted.
Powerful.
And I've always wanted that power, but I don't think I have it. So I think the minutes need to be changed to reflect that it was a unanimous vote.
Yes. And those, that vote will most likely be picked up then on a review of the DCAT presentation of how the vote went, unless somebody has a record.
Karen will look at the tape.
Okay.
We'll fill that in.
All right. Any other corrections, changes, deletions? All right. I believe it was seconded, the motion?
I abstain.
You
I'm gonna
abstained.
abstain.
Okay. Counselor Grant?
Heather Grant, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Curtis Register, abstain.
And the reason for abstaining?
I was in DC lobbying Congress to put sanctions on Russia.
How'd it go?
It went well. We got 40 new signers from the House of Representatives, signed on to 2 bills and 1 resolution to return 20,000 kidnapped children from Ukraine back to Ukraine. Whether that does anything, it's nothing, but at least giving some voice to those.
Thank you. And now, is Diva Ajamian or a representative from University of New Hampshire here for a UNH report? Excuse me.
Deba reached out today
Yes.
and was not able to make it, but she has sent an email with a statement. So
Okay.
I'd like to read it for
Please
her.
do.
if that's okay. Deba Ajamian says, good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it today for my final town council meeting as external affairs chairperson because we have a student senate formal tonight. I wanted to thank all of you for being such a pleasure to work with and to let you know that next academic year you will be in contact with Patrick Daly. He's a wonderful student who is new to Senate this semester and I'm sure he'll do a great job. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a great night. Deepa.
All right. Good. At this point, we have public comments. Please state your name and address before speaking. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. We have and that's it. We don't have a public hearing. So if anybody would like to speak, now is your chance.
I watched the end of the William Hall, Durham. Watched the end of the meeting, last meeting, and I noticed Todd said some things about the 401 and then the in-stream flow regulation. This has been going on for a very long time. Mr. Goose remembers it. It's been mishandled. Jim Lawson said at before he had his a recess from being a counselor, he said that the 401 business was all political. He was absolutely correct. I don't know if it was political, but it was lying. I've given you highlighted copy of the 401. You got a copy? And the 401 is a surface water discharge permit. Discharge. It has zero to do with taking drinking water. Do you hear that, Todd? Good. That was under so much confusion because you were adamant about the fact that they could tell us how much drinking water we could take with a effluent discharge permit. That Mr. Holland here, counsel at the time with a PhD in environmental reporting, wrote a very good report trying to explain about the 401 discharge permit. And when he tried to make his presentation to the council, Mr. Goose, chairman, interrupted him so many times that he virtually had to give up. So obviously things are a little peculiar. The in-stream flow rules, there's no legislation to back them up. All you have to do is tell DES to go stuff it. We got cut off at 12 CFS. That's about 10% of the water we're taking. The variation in a day of the amount of flow from one part of the day to another can vary as much as 50%. The whole business about limiting our water, which was given to us by the legislature after a study by a Boston firm, is just absolute nonsense. The reason I'm making this point now is I'm going to have some other things in another 5 minutes to say some things about our water business that is absolute nonsense. I don't know if Mr. Selig made them up or someone else and he just is following along or what. But most of the information that you get from Mr. Selig and the people that work for him is nonsense. One of the things we did to try to placate Judy Spang down there because that she can see the dam from her house, I recommended to Bob Levesque that he build a siphon. He did. It worked perfectly. It ran for 2 years. I went over to see Tom Burek to find out what sort of nutcases worked in DES, and the one thing I did find out, he said, that siphon was the best thing Durham ever did. Bob Levesque got fed up and left because when he came, he was working for an actual town administrator that was here on contract, and working for Mike Lynch and whatnot just didn't work out. Anyway, when he left, they didn't use the siphon again. And then Todd had our engineer get up in front of the council and say it wouldn't work. This is after it had worked for 2 years, and it's what they use for irrigation in third world countries. Folks, I just want you to see this and understand that discharge is not drinking water. And that went on for 20 years. Matter of fact, Todd said how Peter Smith, with a degree from Bowdoin, wanted this thing solved. Todd didn't read it and understand that discharge is sewage, not water, so It just has been a mess. And I hope you don't harbor any more of these messes about nonsense, because this town's had about all the nonsense it can take. I'll be back in the next meeting. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak?
Yes.
I'm Julian Smith. I live at 3 Chesley Drive. I'm glad to see Jay return to the council. I served with him for 2 of my 4 terms. And I particularly appreciate that he was responsible for bringing the possibility of buying the DeMambro House as a site for our new library. As a library trustee, I made the motion for the trustees to recommend the council buy that house. And as a council member, I made the motion to buy that house, and then the motion for a bond issue to complete what needed to be done. So thank you for coming back, Jay. Now, at the last meeting, I spoke of the possibility, really the necessity, of forming a group, a subcommittee, a working group, whatever you want to call it, to start to market Durham, particularly downtown Durham, as a great place to live. I know from experience sometimes one has to come to the council and say the same thing, and I'm doing that now. You've been hearing a lot from people who are saying the same thing, the things they want and don't want. So I will join the club. There are so many reasons why Durham should be promoted as a location for state-of-the-art condos, for upscale condos, as well as affordable apartments for families. I know we cannot exclude students, but there must be a way to have quiet, responsible tenants. Again, this is a town that has train service to Boston. We're near the beach. We're next door to Newmarket, which has some very fine restaurants. We need more restaurants here in Durham. We need more breakfast places. We have several good ones. The Freedom Cafe and the works. But we need the kind of place where you can get bacon and eggs and toast and hash browns early in the morning, etc., etc. And let's not forget our wonderful rivers for swimming, the historic buildings we have, the sense of history. This is the town where citizens went forward to start the American Revolution by invading Fort William and Mary. And let us not forget that we should try to make this the home of a new beaver colony, a beaver park, where families can come to watch beavers at work, taking advantage of all of the nice plants that are going to grow up when we remove the dam and open, drain the mill pond and create a habitat. I know some of you are horrified at the notion of having a beaver park, but for throwing away gifts. I hate that we're losing an amenity that the town has enjoyed for centuries, the mill pond, and used to enjoy far more 60 years ago when I came to town, 61 years ago, with canoeing, ice skating, fishing, things we just don't see. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak?
I'm not sure whether this is the right time, but I know you're going to be talking about the fifth floor step backs.
Yes, could you
I'm Gary
please?
Whittington, 6 Old Piscataqua Road, and I'm a member of the planning board.
Okay.
Councilor Lehrman asked that I make a statement explaining why we sent back to you a slightly revised version of the language. And when you look at it, you'll see that its purpose is to, and in part this is a response to an awareness that we started to talk about from a comment, public comment made by Councilor Friedrichs, that it would be good with this language to introduce the idea of a building setback to create human scale, so that in cases of a 5-story building, if a developer chose to set the entire building back from Main Street, that would be an alternative method of compliance for that building instead of having to have a 5th-story setback. Did that make sense? So we would create human scale with a building setback that was roughly corresponded to the type of setbacks you see on the opposite side of Main Street in the university buildings, and then that would create human scale, and as a collateral benefit, it would create an area for pedestrian traffic and a potentially more attractive streetscape, because, you know, the human scale is there to encourage pedestrian traffic and pedestrian activity in the downtown zones. Any questions? Does that make sense?
Yeah, is it okay, Joe? I've got a question. Gary, when we sent the original language back, we had, after the third part, we had the setback applies to any intervening road or street that has never been built but which appears on an approved plot.
Yes, the
You know what I'm talking about?
The Ghost Street
Yes.
issue.
Yes. Did you intentionally leave that out when you put it into the?
That never came up in our meeting, but when I looked at the email traffic on that today, I thought of it as a complete non-issue, because I could not imagine that town staff would interpret a ghost street as being the kind of street that the setbacks would apply to, for the reason that if it just appears on a plat, it's abstract. It doesn't really have anything to do with the purpose of the setback in terms of creating human scale at the development level.
Yes, we intentionally wanted to keep that there. So you're
It was
saying
never
that-
before us, I think.
So you're saying it was a mistake, to your knowledge? It wasn't a discussion?
I think,
I'm saying we did not discuss the ghost streets concept. There was some email traffic about it, but I don't understand how a ghost street that just appears on a plat, just intuitively why that's important.
Well, the reason it's
I mean,
important.
if you're making an
Yeah.
issue of it.
Yeah, the reason it's important is because if you don't recognize that street, then you're working off of Main Street, so then you could put a building there, I think it's 90 feet long, that has no setback at all. It's just a straight, square building.
Well, we think that the setback would apply if it fronts Main Street, and that there would be a setback requirement for the 5th floor in the language that we're talking about, but that in lieu of having this 5th floor setback, building setback of 50 feet would be available as a compliance method for a developer.
I get that, but the reason for this was to say that 50 feet would start at the Ghost Street, not at Main Street. That's why this was in here.
I hear you, but I'm still not getting any traction on the logic of why that
Okay.
affects human scale in the downtown.
Okay, so we don't have to discuss it now, but you're saying that you never discussed it and someone decided to take it out. Because we asked the planning board to put it in, and you guys did not put it in. So I'm just wondering why.
Mike, you have your hand raised.
Yeah.
I have perfect memory, and I'm looking at Heather right now.
I'd have to sit and listen to the meeting again, but
I kind of
there was a
vaguely
lot of
remember
dialogue.
the discussion at some point about the segment of street that goes in front of Aroma Joe's.
Right.
And I know that the reference today in the email referred to the continuation of that through to Pettibrook.
Right, to Pettibrook.
But that, I agree, I don't think we ever talked about the invisible part. The part's not paved
Yep.
now, so now it's basically a parking lane.
Yeah.
So I think we talked about that and thought that it probably just for a minute, that probably wouldn't go anywhere, and you'd still be looking at Main Street as, I think, my assumption would have been that we'd be talking about Main Street would be the frontage street.
So
Yeah.
perhaps we could pick up this conversation
Yeah, I
in the
would-
roundtable,
I
because
would-
this is the public
Yeah, that's probably the
comments
time, because,
portion
I mean,
of
like,
What
the
I
meeting.
wanted to do is to,
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
sure.
Yep.
Gary,
So-
thanks for coming to the meeting. I really appreciate you sharing the load with Paul. Thank you.
Jeff Berlin, 3 Cowell Drive. I think it was last meeting, you guys were deliberating, maybe it was the meeting before, you guys were deliberating the 50-foot in the CB1 or wherever it is. And Mike had gone out and walked he's the newest counselor, and he had gone out and he walked the scene, and he had spent time taking pictures and surveying the scene. And later in the conversation, that was brought up in a negative way from Counselor Welsh. He was on the screen, and I don't know if you meant it that way. It seemed like a kind of a cute insult, demeaning in a way to Mr. Lehrman. If I had said something like that, I would have, someone would have said something to me. I don't know. I didn't hear anybody say anything about it on the board. I think it's important to call it out, because I think that Mr. Lehrman spent, I think, reasonable time, and I would argue necessary time as a new counselor to go out there and do that. I don't think demeaning him for doing that was appropriate. Other than that, I just want to reiterate also something that Todd had mentioned at the end of one of the recent meetings. It was after I had made a public comment, just reminding everybody about the enrollment at UNH and the fact that it is declining, and eventually the housing, if you decide to limit any new housing in a way, you're just going to be limiting potential people that are going to be servicing the businesses that still struggle to this day to survive. You have now I know it's been there for a while. Hayden Sports is going out of business after 38 years. I just saw the sign today. There's a lot there. I'm not saying that, specifically the reasons that we're talking about, the reasons why Hayden Sports is going out, but it's just part of the general theme where you have to eventually realize that you have to have people here for more than 8 months out of the year outside of the students that are downtown. You have to have other people downtown that are here for those months of the year. Otherwise, no business is going to be able to survive unless they own the real estate, and they battle the tax assessor every year, and they fight to keep their water bills.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for pointing that out. I did, after I made the comment, think, wow, that was a little bit snarky. So I apologize for that, Mike. I don't mean to be snarky to anyone in the council.
I kind of interpret it as that's one person's opinion.
Good.
But that's fine.
Would anybody else like to make a public comment? I see Beth Olshansky on Zoom. Go ahead, Ms. Olshansky.
Can't hear you.
Need sound.
She figures it out.
You got the timer.
From downstairs.
Okay, how about now? Okay, thank you. I thought I would just clarify what perhaps has turned.
Could you please state your name and address?
Thank you. Beth Olshansky, Packers Falls Road. I hadn't planned on speaking tonight, but I see there's some confusion. And I was confused actually about the planning board discussion and why that portion of the former zoning ordinance regarding the fifth story setback had not been included, as the council had asked that basically the old language, which had been studied significantly over the course of a year back in 2021, had asked that the planning board basically embrace that concept and the language. So on last Friday, when I noticed the language wasn't there and that it had a significant impact or would have on what gets built at the Aroma Joe's site, I went to Michael Barrett to speak with him about what happened. And basically, he said he was trying to simplify the language. He hadn't even really looked at that section that talked about the paper street, hadn't thought about the impacts of leaving it out. So it really was an oversight on his part, and that's why it hadn't been discussed at the planning board. And of course, was he there that meeting? He was there, but it wasn't top of mind. Leaving that out, two things happened. The language got left out and additional language got inserted. So the original language talked about that 20-foot fifth story setback for buildings that face Main Street. And the planning board added language that said the building had to face and abut Main Street. So that was a second criteria that was new that then ruled out the Aroma Joe's building. And I guess my point, looking at the intention of the original working group, was to mitigate the visual impact of 5 stories along Main Street, which I know you've heard from the public quite a bit. Many people in the public find problematic. So whether of that 90-foot long stretch that is the Aroma Joe's building, a good portion of it is behind a rather narrow wedge of that park. So it's still going to have a strong visual impact if that building does not have the 20-foot setback. And I saw in Michael's email response today, he was saying, well, the planning board could put it back in the 20-foot, or perhaps they could put in a 10-foot. And I'll just say, I don't know why. I know why we're quibbling over 20 feet. I don't know why we're quibbling over 10 feet. It's not going to impact your taxes, but it is significantly going to impact the visual impact of a 5-story building. And, I guess my final point is our master plan is very clear that it said the vision for the downtown was 2, 3, and occasionally 4 stories, and that it would retain our small town character, which I don't think 5 stories qualifies as that. And just a reminder, in the master plan survey, 86% of the respondents had said that they wanted the downtown to retain its small town character. So really this is an issue of balancing what's going to incentivize redevelopment. Can we do that and still find that balance that I think Jim Lawson so beautifully demonstrated in his renderings, that if the building 5th story is 20 feet set back, you're not going to see that 5th floor, and really you get the extra value and rental space of that 5th story without the visual impact. I see Michael Barron just came on, and perhaps he would like to comment as well, but thank you for allowing me to clarify.
Thank you. And yes, Michael Barron has his hand up, and would you like to speak, Mr. Barron?
Sure. Good evening. I'm upstairs, but I will join you when you get to the zoning amendment. Regarding the language that pertains to Ballard Street, in the course of this, I was looking at the 10 and 20 foot setback, and that was what I prepared for the planning board. So I missed that piece about referring to Ballard Street, the paper street. Beth pointed that out to me Friday, as she said, and sent me an email about it today. So I forwarded all the information to the planning board this morning. So if the planning board, this is, as I think has been conveyed to you, the planning board thought it would be best to put the setbacks in the architecture regulations rather than zoning, and we're having a public hearing on that this Wednesday. I did not raise that point with the planning board. I was focused on the 10 and 20 feet. So I missed that piece of it. I thought it was a little peripheral, but you know, I should have brought that up with them. But I've made them aware. I will point that out in my memo for the board for this Wednesday. And if the board does wish to add that to the regulations, that's easy to do. They would need another public hearing, but they could do that for May 27th. And that would be up to them. In terms of if they do wish to include Ballard Street, which is a paper street, but now it's a pedestrian way, it's a sidewalk. So you could have a fifth story setback there because pedestrians do walk past there. But note that that would be a 10-foot setback, not a 20-foot setback. The 20-foot setback applies only to Main Street. If that is included, then that would be a setback from Ballard Street, and therefore that would be a 10-foot setback.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? All right.
We got one more, Joe.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, thank you, Beth Olshansky.
No, you've spoken
Sure.
already.
Tom Daly, 190 Piscataqua Road. Chair Friedman, council members, and Administrator Selig. Please consider this a bouquet of public comments that are all bundled up for your consideration. Number one, the Mill Pond Dam. From listening to Mr. Selig's update at the last council meeting, I now understand that Durham will not be receiving NOAA grant funding for the removal of the dam. I'm hoping that the council will explain to the community the revised funding plan for this project in absence of NOAA's grant funding. Number two, item number 15 in your packets tonight, zoning ordinance for downtown 5 stories. I want to continue to reiterate my support for the zoning amendment as now currently written, and I encourage the council to review the planning board's most recent meeting where accommodations for downtown style and built where and architectural standards to define how it should look is the right way for us to go. I'm excited for the council to support this now properly crafted set of regulations, and let's please stop with the delay tactics and move the process along. Item number 3, in your packets tonight, item number 13 is around council goals. I emailed you all a detailed set of comments this morning about the council goals, so I won't go into low-level details, but I want to highlight a few key things for the record. The document itself has a draft of 8 goals and roughly 35 sub-items, and there's meaningful overlap in those items that will complicate reporting. I feel that many goals are duplicative, and with some careful rearrangement and consolidation, I think you could get down to 6 goals and 30 sub-items. I hope that will not only streamline reporting, but also create focus on these important initiatives. On Goal 3B, tax rates, valuation, expense management, the 2026 tax rate reflects a 14.96% increase over the 2025 rate. It's a significant increase in taxes and is of concern. And while attempting to cap the tax rate is helpful, it doesn't solve the entire problem. Changes to the valuation can still allow spending to expand. And expanding spending of concern, and given a 15% increase in taxes, I think the council should be engineering solutions that show the community the trend can not only be stopped, but also reversed. Capping both the tax rate and the property tax revenues raised is a stronger constraint and really deserves serious consideration. Let's show the community members who were here in December and January that their concerns around taxes were heard clearly. On Goal 5A, housing. The housing goal sits in quality of life, but is also a fiscal question. When housing gets built, at what density and whether it connects to town water and sewer directly affects the tax rate, tax base, and those infrastructure costs. Market rate housing in the right locations can strengthen the tax base without proportionally increasing the service demand. The goal should explicitly link housing decisions to their fiscal implications and not treat them as separate conversations. On number 7, collaboration. 7B calls for communication with the Oyster River Cooperative School District, which I think is correct, but the language there is largely aspirational. Please specify a format and frequency so there's something to report on and some teeth to that goal. I think it goes without saying that many Durham residents, myself included, are here to take advantage in a good way of the premium school district that we have access to. But given that the school district is the largest driver of most residents' total tax bill, I believe it's important we're creating more visibility to the happenings in the district and taking advantages of opportunities to collaborate and coordinate. And finally, on goal number 7, public engagement. As others have mentioned, Durham is a diverse community and we can benefit from more public engagement. I'm not convinced that public comment alone is a substantive enough forum for our community. I encourage the council to consider the goals around town council forums and Q&A opportunities as you craft your goals. Thank you for the opportunity to offer a public comment. Have a great evening.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all for your comments. Moving on to the unanimous consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull either of the items? Seeing no one, then I will make a motion that the Durham Town Council does hereby adopt Resolution 2026-06 to amend Resolution 2007-14, creating the Energy Committee Steering Committee, later renamed the Durham Energy Committee, to allow the committee to select a vice chairperson and removing the requirement to select a secretary, since the members take responsibility for creating meeting minutes. And further, that the town council does hereby continue to keep sealed the non-public session minutes from July 20th, 2009, January 24th, 2011, March 19th, 2012, and June 16th, 2014. This being unanimous consent, we'll start with the voting. And is there a second, excuse me, for those motions?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Welsh. Councilor Register.
Kurt Treasurer, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Jay Goose, aye.
All right. And next we have, excuse me, a possible appointment to the Conservation Commission. And Councilor Ford, unfortunately, is not here. Is Mr. Hadley here? Yes. Well, I'd like to make a motion that the council, upon recommendation of the Conservation Commission Chair, appoint David Hadley of 15 Edgerly Garrison Road to an unexpired alternate membership position on the Conservation Commission with a term expiration of April 2027.
Second.
Thank you. Welcome. We'd like to hear if you'd like to say something.
Glad to be here.
Okay. Councilor Lehman.
I just had the opportunity when I was campaigning, met and we had a couple of discussions with David Hadley, so I've had a couple conversations with him, and I think he's a interested resident that'll be good for this.
Excellent.
Yeah, and David, I'd also like to thank you for reaching out to me. And we had coffee last week and a chance to talk about the Conservation Commission because I served on.
Would you like to say anything?
I moved to Durham because it's clean, quiet, and beautiful. The reason it's beautiful is because of the strong environmental protections that the town has taken up. It's important for the town to have a series of protections for our environment and for the shorelands, the wetlands, the rivers that are built on top of an existing regulatory infrastructure from the state and at the federal level. We're the first line of defense. And in order to implement all of this stuff, we need to have a clear voice from the Conservation Commission to give clear recommendations to the town on how we can do that better.
Well spoken.
Yes.
Awesome.
So I'll just ask a question, if you don't mind. There's an issue coming forward, it seems, on conservation subdivisions and relooking at the current regulations. Are you familiar with the current ones or any of the proposed changes?
Of the environmental regulations?
For these conservation subdivisions that are part of the planning board.
Subdivisions.
Right, so they're talking about perhaps reconsidering what a conservation subdivision is. It will ultimately, I think, come to the Conservation Commission, but I didn't know if you had a chance to look at those issues yet.
I'm a red shirt freshman. I've only been here for a couple of meetings.
Okay.
And so the primary focus I've been having is reviewing the Shoreland Protection Ordinance and the Wetland Protection Ordinance and trying to get my head around those right now.
Okay.
Throwing hardballs early.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's a toughie, dude.
I'm not familiar
We
with
haven't
the
even looked
conservation.
at them yet at the planning board, so.
Was there a second for the motion?
I am the second.
Would anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hadley?
No questions, but as I try to say, just thank you for giving your time and your knowledge to share with the town. That's awesome.
So we'll vote. Councilor Lerman?
Aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
First register, aye.
Jay Goose, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye. Well, welcome, and thank you very much for agreeing to serve.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, we now have a presentation by Dr. Andy Smith and UNH students on the Durham Police Department Community Survey results and findings. And I'll count on you, Dr. Smith, or to introduce who's... I'm sorry.
Tonight with Dr. Smith and a group of his students from UNH. Dr. Smith is the director of the UNH Survey Center. And as they're setting up, I'll just give a quick foundation. We certainly appreciate you giving us the time on your busy agenda, but this is an important thing for us at the police department that we do, and we feel for you to hear as well as the residents of the town. So CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, of which we have been a part of since 1996, I think, has made a community survey a part of the accreditation process for a long time. And originally it was a survey that needed to be completed in the community every 3 years. CALEA has changed that over time, and more recently wanted it either annually or at least once every 2 years. The appetite we got from the community was that was too much. We were reaching out too frequently, asking the same questions, and they felt like they were giving the same responses. So we have maintained a 3-year schedule of doing this survey and partnering with the UNH Survey Center to do that. Many of you should have received the survey in the mail or through the Friday updates as a way of giving us data on what we, the police, are doing and what we should be doing or focusing on that you, the community, think are issues. So with that being said, these students met with me back in February to go over our previous surveys. We keep many of the same questions each year so that we can monitor the data and keep kind of a trend going with all of that. We looked at new questions that maybe we should add. Some of those were really around e-devices like scooters and things of that nature, and how they impact the community. And we talked to the students about what we're looking for to how to get this data out, how we want to seek the survey results from them. And then it's really, and I'll let Dr. Smith take over for this part, but a lesson for them in getting both electronic and paper data, and then tabulating those results and bringing them together in a format that we can present and show to all of you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Smith and the group, and then I believe the chief is on Zoom, and the deputy chief and I are here, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or comments that you have regarding the data presentation. Thank you very much.
Evening, chief.
In just the DCAT control room, we've got a presentation on PowerPoint, so if you could, there you go, thank you.
Nice job.
Since Mr. Goose is on the council
It's
now, we
supposed
don't
to
have to
be
worry
my
about our
job,
IT
isn't it?
stuff now, right? Yeah.
So thank you very much for having me here today, and I want to introduce the students that worked on this project. As Captain had mentioned, we've been working with the town of Durham's Police Department since 2000 on this. About every 3 years we do this. It's a joint project between some students, so the students do the work. This is a low-cost thing. The only thing that's any cost to the town is just the mailing of the surveys and the postal return on it. So we have Anna Anderson, Alexa Bilgert, Mia Roth, and Taryn Swisher, who are all worked on this project. We have one other person that couldn't make it here tonight, but they did a wonderful job administering this. The background is that as I said, we've done this for many years, and I think Captain Lavoie made a good point that things don't change much. In fact, the numbers can't get much better in terms of people's perceptions of the police and the service they get from the police department and the safety they have here. What we're going to show you today are the newer findings, as well as highlight some of the things where there's actual improvements going on. And the one area that Captain Lavoie talked about that is a major concern is the let's say the e-scooters, but it's e-scooters, bicyclists, pedestrians. It's general traffic stuff that goes on downtown as the major concern. And I'd say as a citizen here for 20-some years, if that's the biggest problems that we have, it's not such a bad place to be. So take it away.
They both work, so whichever is more
You can
comfortable.
sit down there and talk in front of the microphone,
Yeah.
they work fine.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so first we just want to say thank you so much because we were really excited to go about doing this because it's a really interesting way to collaborate the university with the town of Durham because there's Durham residents living here, of course, as well as college students. So it was interesting to see everything come together, especially with the residents' perception of everything going on in the town. So we all just got introduced, but I'm Anna, that's Allie, Mia, and Taryn. So we'll go ahead and give you the outline. So we're first going to go over the purpose, why we went over the presentation, and then the abstract, the methods, the results, and the conclusion. So we'll start with the abstract, or the purpose, which just make sure you talk about that.
Okay, so as mentioned before, we did conduct this survey, us students with the UNH Survey Center for the Town of Durham Police Department. This helps with their accreditation as well as just gathering general thoughts and feelings on how well the police department is performing and perceptions of crime levels and rates and just any other concerns that residents might have.
Okay, so as mentioned before, the Dover Police Department, or the Durham Police Department is accredited through CALIA, and that we put on this survey every 3 years. As we stated again, mail surveys were sent to every Durham resident, and there were also electronic versions that you could get on Friday updates. There was some sharing over social media. And surveys are conducted to show the satisfaction that the community has with the Durham police. And overall, the results showed a strong support and satisfaction with the Durham police. And again, e-scooters were the biggest concern that people had, which again is a very good thing to have if that's the biggest crime or issue that the community feels is the biggest problem.
So looking at the methods, which is just a fancy way of saying how we went about conducting the survey, this is a survey that gets sent out every 3 years, just because, as mentioned before, every year is a little bit excessive because things don't change super dramatically. But the first thing we did is we went ahead as a group to meet with Durham PD to talk with Captain Lavoie, which was wonderful because we were able to revise and review the old survey and eliminate questions that we didn't think we needed to ask anymore and add in new questions that we thought was very necessary. And the major thing that came up was the e-scooters because there have been some comments here and there about the safety and the wildness, if you will, of the kids on the e-scooters. So after we fixed up the survey and added new questions or removed questions that were no longer necessary to include, we went ahead and sent out the survey through mail-out questionnaires, like a physical piece of paper. It was sent out in the Friday updates as well, and it was accessible through the town website. So we had our data collection period from about mid-March to mid-April. It would have been March 10th to April 13th, but we'll probably end up getting surveys for the next year as people trickle in and send them out, but we will not be including those into our data. So once we got the paper surveys, we entered them into Qualtrics, which is basically just a survey tool to combine answers from the online, which are already implemented into like a data collection system. So we manually entered in all of the ones that are on paper onto Qualtrics, but you do it more than once just so that we can make sure everything we put in the first time is correct. And then we got a spreadsheet of all of the mistakes that we might have made with those input numbers and data. So then we went ahead and fixed those, went back, fixed them, and then we made sure everything was accurate. So looking at the modes of distribution, the most interesting sort of points that kind of stuck out was your age and how you would fill out the survey. So if you were older, you were more likely to respond to the survey through using paper, through mail, because it's just more accessible to certain people. We used were SPSS and Excel in order to conduct the data collection and analysis. Oh, I'm back. So these are questions just about how safe people are feeling in Durham. So of course, walking at night in downtown Durham, people feel very safe. If you're walking alone in your immediate neighborhood, walking the dog, stuff like that, people feel very safe. Being at, your own home at night, people feel very safe. And just alone during the day and walking your immediate neighborhood, people feel very safe as well. The only thing that really stuck out was women tend to feel less safe walking alone at night, but that's generally everywhere. But it's still a point to mention regardless of where you are. But it doesn't really have much to do with being in Durham itself, more so just like a gendered statistic.
Okay, so how safe do people feel at night in their home? People genuinely feel very safe. The not safe rate has literally stayed the same for the past 13 years now. So that's good. Let's keep that going. And then do you think crime in Durham has increased, decreased, or stayed the same over the last 12 months? Genuinely, people have thought that it stayed the same, only a 2% decrease. And 5% of people thought it increased, but it's genuinely staying the same.
Okay, so this is same questions, but about daytime hours, your home being burglarized. Again, like everything previously mentioned, people are not concerned, and the level of not concerned is rising. So overall, people are less concerned about having their home burglarized in Durham. Okay, so this is an overview of some of the questions we asked about what people are concerned about in daytime hours. The highest percentage of concern lied in children being exposed to drugs, with, what is that, 36% being concerned, and then there's no number next to that other one. But yeah, so it was children being exposed to drugs, with 6%. And then bicycling in Durham, that probably goes hand in hand with the e-scooters, so the traffic and bicycling in Durham is what people are concerned about. This is just zooming in on people being concerned about their kids being exposed to drugs. But again, people are not concerned. It actually kind of switched in about, 2016. where people were more concerned, but it's flip-flopped and now people are less concerned about that being a problem.
I'm sorry, Karen, what is the purple? I can't read it.
The purple is people concerned about the issue, and the blue, the one that's going up, that one's not concerned. Yep.
Okay, so people concerned about the following situations in Durham during nighttime hours. The two main things that people are most concerned about are children being exposed to drugs at 7%, and then bicycling in Durham at 4%, but same thing, people aren't really concerned with a lot of things, and just to keep an eye out about all that stuff.
Could I ask
Yeah.
John Lavoie, is drug use becoming more or less prevalent? Do we have more drug arrests, less drug arrests than we used to?
I don't think that we've seen a massive shift in trend there. So I think that it's pretty stable. Drug use across the state, I think, is stabilized a little bit, but generally has been trending in a very upward motion in the last 10 years. Here in Durham, we have not seen significant increases that model the rest of the state. So we've been, knock on wood, a little bit insulated there, but I would say that it's remained very stable to what we've seen in the recent past for us.
Thanks.
And then people concerned about the following situations during nighttime hours, this being you're having your home burglarized. It went down from 2023, 1%, so only 1% of people are very concerned with it. And people not concerned with it actually went up 4%, so that's really good.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to be talking about is the prompt. To what extent do you believe the issues listed below are a problem in Durham? Of course, the most popular problem was bikelists not following traffic laws or riding in biking lanes. And that sort of goes hand in hand with the e-scooters. So I'm actually colorblind, but what you see as blue is the blue is what's insignificant, and then yellow is the somewhat, and then the red is obviously significant.
And let me jump in here one sense. I updated these slides, but you've got some older ones here. So when you get the final report, they'll have some clarifications of some of these things. The two red lines that are that stick out the furthest, those have to do with e-scooters. Those are the ones that we added this time around, and the label doesn't show up on here for the just the display. But the e-scooter issue is the ones that were the biggest complaints that people have.
Yep, so the e-scooters are really the biggest problem. People are more concerned about e-scooters than being murdered, actually, in Durham. So that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Yes. So the next prompt sort of was actually kind of relevant because I know we just had a question about drug use in Durham. So to what extent do you believe the issues listed below are a problem in Durham? Illegal drug possession and use, it's pretty insignificant. There's obviously been some changes over the years, but the nature of it being insignificant has decreased within the last few years.
Okay, so this one is regarding public drinking and intoxication. Overall, people are finding this to be insignificant. That number of insignificance has increased. So again, people are increasingly finding it not significant, with people finding that to be an issue with only around 8%.
So you probably took this before Derby Day.
Yes, we did.
I could jump in on this one. The areas where you saw this higher, greater significance were back during the days when we had the post-Red Sox, post-Patriots, post-whatever riots that were out in the street. Then drinking was a much more significant concern. What I would pay attention to here is the blue line that continues to go up. That's the percentage of people who say this is an insignificant problem, and it's up to over 58% now.
This may be a premature question, ladies and gentlemen, but is there a demographic data, or geographic data, excuse me, of cool?
Yes, the full report will have has all of these questions, every single question broken down by the gender of the respondent, the age of the respondent, do they have children, how long have they lived here, what part of town did they live in, so all of that's there. I should say there are very few demographic differences between responses to this. They highlighted one about women being somewhat more concerned about their own personal safety than men, but that's about it. The part of the town that you live in doesn't seem to have much difference at all. In fact, one of the things that we were discussing about questions to drop was, why do we keep having this question on here about where you live in town? Because it never shows any difference. So people are thinking more holistically, I think, about where their neighborhoods, or there's just no real differences between their neighborhoods.
Thank you for that answer.
Excuse me, can I ask a question? Maybe you're going to discuss it at the end, but is there a question about how many people actually go downtown now? When I see these results that say, yes, not bothering me, public intoxication, but if you don't go downtown and don't see it, you wouldn't know it. So is there some way to correlate that?
We don't have a question in there about the frequency of being downtown.
Are people avoiding the downtown?
I would say it's hard to say, but it's really hard to avoid downtown if you're living in town. You're going to go to the grocery store or something downtown, for the post office or whatever. You kind of stuck by going around.
Councilor Guz, I think it's more indicative of less impact, fewer students coming. Enough is enough. The town needs to deal with this, and we've implemented a host of policies that have effectively cut the problem off. So this is an indicator of success.
Yeah, I agree.
I have another comment, but I'll wait.
Speaking on that note, on the actual mail survey, we did see a lot of people write NA towards like things like walking downtown at night or going like around downtown, because they felt that they, like a lot of the people that were living in, I think it's Riverside, said that they don't usually, or Riverwoods, there we go, don't usually go out at night. So they felt that they didn't need to answer it because it didn't apply to them. So there were a couple of responses that were like, oh, I don't walk alone at night, or I don't go downtown anymore because of.
Well, there was a
XYZ.
question about safety at the very beginning, and safety was almost 50%. Don't feel safe.
Oh, no.
To some degree downtown.
Yeah, the percentage, it's, I think, significantly lower than 50%. It's down in the 5 or 10% range.
40 and something.
It was not concerned at all, somewhat concerned, and very concerned. And the very concerned was like 1%.
Yeah.
I have to look at that graph again.
So this
Did you want to ask a question?
No, I'm not sure if they're done now. You
Oh,
guys
wait,
still
you
more to
can-
go?
You can ask. There's more in the presentation, but you can ask the
Finish the
question now.
presentation then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this question is about the scooters, e-bikes, e-devices riding on sidewalks. This is obviously a very hot ticket issue. So the red is a significant issue. So 35% of respondents found this to be a significant issue, with 37 thinking it's a somewhat significant issue. So this is what's on people's minds, and this is the gripe that they have with the town is the scooters, e-bikes, and e-devices on the sidewalks.
Okay, so we're going to move into interactions with Durham PD. So we went ahead and asked several questions about whether or not people have had contact with Durham police within the last 3 years, then follow-up questions based on what they answered. So most people, overwhelmingly most people, the majority of people were treated professionally with dignity and with respect. And if the Durham Police Department were called for any reason in the past 3 years, they responded faster than what the caller expected, or what was be about the right amount of time for someone to arrive, or an officer to arrive. And the majority of people said, 97%, said that the Durham Police Department is responsive to their needs, and 3% said that they were not. So obviously, almost 100% of the time, Durham PD is responsive to the needs of the residents in Durham. And 98% of people would not hesitate to call the Durham Police Department if they needed to call the police.
Okay, so overall, most people felt that the Durham Police Department does provide services. They did an excellent job while providing those services. And then 32% felt that they did a good job. providing the services to community. I think 0% said they did very poor, which is obviously really good to see. And again, you can kind of see the arc in the graph from where Professor Smith said the UNH was a little crazy, was a little party school. So you can see how that has really increased over the years with police satisfaction.
I wanted to emphasize that point. A lot of the changes that you see here all are happening kind of after the riot issue was seemingly taken care of, and we've seen that support for what the police are doing and how people feel in the town has improved significantly and stayed high from that point.
So looking at some of the topical issues in Durham, there's pretty much overwhelming satisfaction with topical issues. So we're looking at stuff like the town of Durham is working diligently to address the safety and needs of bicyclists. Yes, they are definitely working well with that. And we had some questions about like traffic type laws. So speed tables should be used as a traffic calming method. 33% of people agreed, but a lot of people here sort of remain neutral, just because, you know, on Madbury Road we have some, we have a, whatever you call that thing? Calming feature. Yes, calming traffic on Madbury Road. I live right there. It's really annoying when I try to take a left because I can't. But anyway, so just sort of questions about that. I mean, it's pretty much sort of stayed the same over the last couple of years. But yeah, so like the last one is interesting. So the Durham police are honest and ethical when dealing with you. The majority of people strongly agreed, and then the second most popular response was agree. So that's really good satisfaction.
Okay. Where do you most often get information about the town of Durham? In both 2023 and 2026, most people got their information from Friday updates. Social media coming in at second, and local paper coming in at third. So yeah. And then here are our conclusions. So the Durham residents feel very safe in their community. The community strongly supports the Durham Police Department with a 64% of individuals rating as excellent. 97% of individuals said they were treated professionally with dignity and respect. And another 97% of citizens said the Durham Police Department were responsive to their needs. And I just want to emphasize the excellent response time. That's amazing. And then our two areas of concerns, scooters, pedestrians, bicyclists, and then people are worried about the telephone and internet scams. I guess there's a rise in that. So people, yeah, if you're older, people made comments about that, so we just wanted to make a note of it.
It seemed that in the scams that the older set was worried more about telephone and the younger was more worried about internet scams. Is that right?
See a correlation?
Yeah.
To that point, I know that there's been a lot of that highlighted by state police as well. It's been in the press quite a bit over the last month or two about the rise in internet scams that seems to come out with the spring peepers every year.
But what I was curious about is, so the majority of people over 30 thought that was a significant issue. Is that because there's greater awareness of it, or are a disproportionate number of people in our town being targeted for it?
I don't think we could pull it apart. I'd have to speak to the police. They probably have much better records about what kind of reporting that they get from people.
We had to make the deputy chief do something.
Hey, Jack, right, thank you. Jack Dalton, your deputy chief. We are seeing the elderly population in our community being targeted, and we're doing everything we can to meet with as many people as we can to discuss this. I think if you go to our social media pages, you'll see that we quite often put some posts on there to kind of make everyone aware of kind of what's going on with these scams, because these scams are, I got one the other day that I almost fell for. My wife's gotten one where she did fall for it, and I jumped in last minute, and we both came together and with the conclusion that it's probably a scam. So they're getting really good, and we're doing everything we can to combat it. Also, while I'm up here, I will say this. As much as we somewhat joke about the scooters, we know it's a very serious topic right now. We have gone from kind of our warnings with scooters to now prosecute. I'm also the department's prosecutor, to prosecuting these. We have directed patrols in our downtown every day. We have officers getting out walking, looking for this. We've gotten some grant money to just hit scooters, and because we understand, like, if that's an issue with our community, we want to make sure we work on that. We don't do this community just to say, gee, we're doing a great job. We do these surveys in hopes of getting some feedback that we can get better at. And I think that is the one area that we really want to work and get better at, because we would like to see it change in that in 2 and 3, 4 years when we do our next survey. So I want you to know we are taking that seriously, because I know a lot of you are hearing from the community that it is an issue. So, I think we'll be able to figure this out through campaigns and fines, and I think we'll get better. I don't think we're ever going to have a perfect solution for it, because I think when someone's late for class, and I use students as an example, they're going to take the one-way road down Petty Brook. They're not going to go up and around and walk across crosswalks. So, but we will be there when we can to assist with it. I also want to take this opportunity to say thank you very much. Like, what a great job. Like, I was the captain before the captain, and this is hard. I know it's hard, and I did the last 2 surveys, and it's a ton of work. So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Dr. Smith. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for letting us police the way we do in this community, because we're different. And this isn't by accident. Like, this is a lot of hard work that this survey came out this way through our officers. And I want to thank our officers, because they go out and they do realize that every interaction they have with the public is a really important interaction to that person. It might be our 5th call of the night, but that may be their first call to a police department in 10, 20 years, and they'll never forget it. So thank you for letting us police the way we do, and thanks again.
Hey, Jack.
I just want to jump in here. We jump in real quick and echo what the deputy and the captain said about working with Andy and his students. They've been phenomenal, going back through the years, and very receptive. So thank you guys for the hard work. I knew it took a lot of effort. So we were very pleased with the outcome, obviously, with the positive numbers that we're seeing. Then to speak to the bicycle and the e-scooters, we've applied for grant funding from the New Hampshire Department of Safety, which were successful in. So we will have officers out there doing enforcement on the bikes, the e-scooters, the pedestrians, crosswalk violations, those types of things. So we don't just look at this document, this survey, and put it on the shelf and show it to Kalia when they come in and do their inspections. We actually tailor our enforcement efforts and responses around what we hear from what the community is telling us. So we're very pleased with the amount of people who actually completed it and sent it back into us. We know it takes time out of your day, so thank you for those folks who did that. And again, thank you, Andy, and to your team as well.
Mr. Laramith?
So first of all, I'd like to comment to the students. Thank you for participating in this, and I think it's wonderful that you get to get involved with a real-world, practical application.
They're all this is a justice studies class, so this is right up
perfect. And then a question for whoever wants to answer it. And just as a comment, there's no hidden agenda with the question. I'm just asking a question because it sort of just occurred to me as I'm watching this. You cut the demographics by under age 30. And one thing that popped in my mind is listening to this, it's like the group that I would be most concerned about, that didn't seem to get a specific representation, is high school and junior high school students. And I'm just wondering if that was a consideration to reach out to them, how if it's not noted in there, but like if you had answers to the group that were aged, I don't know, 12 to 17 or something.
Yeah, I can speak to that both from a practical perspective and a methodological perspective. First of all, it's very challenging to get access to people that are under 18 years old. You can't go through the schools. Pardon?
You can't go through the schools.
You can't really go to the schools. You have protections about who you can go to. We have to go through different levels of IRB review for people who are under 18 to have them fill out surveys. But the more practical problem with, and this involves UNH students as well, younger people are the nightmare of any survey researcher. They do not complete surveys. No matter what you do, you can offer them money, you can offer them anything, and they won't do them. So the percentage, the number that you would get back is frankly not worth the effort and the cost that it would take to get those number of respondents in. And I don't really think it would make that much difference, because typically what you see with younger students with these surveys, we do a survey with the town, or with the UNH police as well, is that it's very similar to what we're seeing here with UNH students versus what you're seeing for your total population. So there's not that much of a difference from a practical perspective. But it's getting students, if you can come up with a way to get younger people to complete surveys,
I mean, I'm just
do well.
This is a dumb question, just asking. It's like, it just seems to me that that's an interesting group to sort of focus on, because I hear a lot from friends with, younger kids. Like, there's a lot goes on. I'm not suggesting in any way it's going on here, but because I just don't know. But I'm just wondering, is there a way to get the school to create their own survey off of this survey? Like, here's the material. If you want to do a survey, you might want to do it, and maybe, I don't know, maybe UNH can't run it through the computer because of...
No, that's certainly that's certainly something that if the schools took that on as an effort, they could certainly do that, and we could help them out with that as well.
Analyze it for them.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. It's just the FERPA laws and age limits change what you can do from an outside organization. From an internal organization, there's other ways around it.
I'll say that the responses from that age group can tend to be problematic in the sense that sometimes it's, well, let's just see what we can make out of this, and the answers aren't really true. It's not a good idea, I think, that age.
It's when we do it with the UNH Police Department, you'd be surprised that the people who do respond seem to take it seriously. You don't get too many things that are crazy. It's pretty obvious when people are doing that. You really don't see that as much. The bigger problem we have is that they just don't bother. And that's the biggest headache. Yeah.
I'm talking about the high school, middle school.
I don't want to get there. There's some horror stories about some published research about surveys given unsupervised to high school students in a room, and their minds run.
Well, I mean, there's always focus groups and other ways of getting information that's more eyes on, and it's not a goof thing, just sit and talk to us or something.
Something else I will say is that something that we learned in this class, we're actually master's students, we're heading into our master's degree, so we had some sort of different perspectives upon things, and something that really was put into our brains is that it's incredibly expensive to do surveys like your focus group becomes a lot larger, like your sample becomes bigger. And so looking at the residents of Durham that have an address that live in like a townhouse or not in a dorm, like we could send those out and that's pretty affordable. But once you make it bigger, you have to get certain approvals. Like in order for us to conduct this survey and be in the class, we had to get IRB certified in order to work with humans. So like that's something we had to do. And when people are under 18, it sort of complicates things a little bit. But it also just complicates it, and we only had a semester to really do the research. So it's certainly something that could be done, as Professor Smith said, but it just complicates things a little bit more, and we'd need a little bit more time. But we've learned a lot of skills that it could certainly be done, so that, thank you. But it just takes more time, so.
I think you guys have done great.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. You mentioned the UNH police also doing a survey, since they are CALIA certified as well. Had you seen any differences in their survey results versus the Durham police?
The focus is different. The questionnaire is different than what they're looking at. They've got a lot more concerns about walking safety within campus because it's such a pedestrian campus. Safety of faculty and staff within their buildings, getting to the cars and so forth. So there's a much more focused, targeted reason that they're doing that survey. But the overall sorts of issues are about the same once you factor in that the biggest issues that we have with students. And I've been on their community standards review boards for years now, alcohol and pot. And that's the biggest problems that they've got. And I think that's at every college in America. So, but the safety issue at UNH students feel quite safe. I think you guys can probably speak to it, but it's not a place where students have been reporting to feel unsafe. We're not seeing that in. I don't see it in the hearings that we have, and the police could probably speak to what you guys would be called in for any things like that that are real issues of safety or concern. It's a very safe environment as well.
Then I also wanted to thank you for sharing that data about the NA written in response, and wonder if maybe that's something we could look at including in future surveys, because I think Councilor Hughes made a good point about it would be interesting to see how many, honestly, how many respondents don't have experience of some of these things, because that would impact, if they're not actually going downtown, they may have no concern, but it's, it's because they're not really there. And then I would also ask, as we stop people on the scooters, I'm wondering if there's also a way to kind of collect some data from them about, because I tend to think of these things as design problems, like to the point, we shouldn't be criminalizing e-scooters or penalizing people for using them if they're using them the way that was not intended in our traffic patterns. Maybe our traffic patterns need to change. So can we also, as we're, if the UNH survey, if they might consider also asking students particularly about their feelings around e-scooters. Is the infrastructure inadequate? Are there things that we could be changing about, the layout of certain crossings that would make it so that all of these different actors can more harmoniously live? Because it's, I cycle a lot, and so I get very frustrated that the world has been built for cars. And sometimes it just needs to kind of be more equally, everyone needs their space in the infrastructure, so.
Yeah, I think that you recognize the biggest problem we've got is we've got a circle right here in the center of town that everything has to come into, including the students. And during the day and the evening, it becomes problematic. I have a son that drives one of the Coast UNH buses here, and he's terrified that he's going to hit one of these kids on the e-scooters because they can go very fast, cutting out from inside parked cars, wearing dark clothes at night with no flashers on them. It's likely something that I don't want to predict bad things, but it's not unlikely that you're going to see some serious accidents with these things happening. And I would say I don't know if it's an issue of what we can do with the infrastructure because we're somewhat limited, as much as it is with an education on the part of the students who are riding these things, who don't see the danger of wearing a black hoodie at night and black pants and riding on a dark scooter with no lights on it down a dark street. That's the answer. Is they're young. They don't think about that.
I think the infrastructure we've been through, those of us have been around a long time. Remember all the things we tried to do about that. Take the two-way down Main Street, wipe the gut, ended up wiping somebody out. We tried that, and I know Todd's aware of it. We actually we don't have a way to do it. There's no way to do it. So education's going to be the way to do it.
You can go first, Jim.
I just wanted to say that we should acknowledge that the survey shows excellent community support for the police department, and we should acknowledge that we're very fortunate about that. And we do know that it takes both extraordinary work and extraordinary people, and it's just greatly appreciated. I can only imagine how many town councils and town governments are dealing with policing issues, and it's just not the case in this town, and so we appreciate it.
I want to add one anecdote. I'm going to throw you under, not the bus, but this is a good anecdote. Captain Lavoie said, he said that this survey is really important to them, first because it shows that they're doing a good job. It gives them a measure to look at. Secondly, because it helps them identify issues and problems that are coming up over time. But third, you were able to use this as a way of recruiting people to come in and work at the police department, to be able to show students that this is a great place to work. You've got a supportive community. You've got people that are helpful and rely on the police. They're not problematic. The police are not seen as, you know, the heavies out there, and they're really seen as part of the community. So I think that story that you told me about that is really a valid use of this that we hadn't intended, but it's there.
I'm just going to lead off and say thank you very much for your time and your thought putting this together. It was very articulate, very detailed, and it's not just a pat on the back or a check in the box. This is hard data with a stop, freezing time of feelings, of facts, of efforts that have gone in and been collated into a percentage, right? And this is a way for us to understand our current operating environment. This is a way for us to make left and right adjustments as times change or as problems get more exacerbated. I mean, e-scooters aren't going away, right? As cars get more expensive, as more people are on the planet and mobility devices or non-vehicular traffic becomes more obtainable, we're going to see more and more of this stuff, which is why I'm really glad that we're thinking ahead with like complete streets type stuff. The signs that have been posted on the education piece, I know it's like Groundhog Day every year because you get a fresh crop of people that are having access to these fantastic, I know I say this every time, but I think of like Marty McFly from Back to the Future. And I'm terrified myself because I drive a pretty big truck. All it takes is a love tap of me not paying attention. And so that's something that impacts my willingness to drive downtown, particularly in low light conditions. The internet scams is going to continue to rise as we have AI to help bolster our adversaries. And those aren't going to be something, they're a far cry from the email chain letters and the Nigerian prince letters. I myself have fallen victim to several, thankfully not big deals, but like faking their TSA pre-check renewal or faking my water bill, you know, stuff like that makes you feel dumb. But it's designed to trick you. They do that on purpose. It's very well thought out. They're good at what they do. And it's one of those things where it's hard to trace. And so I'm grateful for our ability to understand and track and hopefully help prevent further damage to our population. And I think it's also important to remember that we live in a college town. And the college has been here since 1866. And kids get drunk. And I think non-zero should be the goal, not necessarily zero interactions with kids that are drunk. I myself had 4 motivated Derby Day folks try to hitchhike in my truck while I was taking my family to dinner, and they stood in the middle of the road and tried to jump in my truck, and I was like, bro, you're in the wrong truck. But it's one of those things where we've got to learn how to work together as a population and understanding that 21-year-olds aren't going to all of a sudden become old men. You know, they're not going to all of a sudden become people who only sit in watch the 2 channels they got or read the newspaper and the Reader's Digest. And so just understanding the operating environment they're in, having a little variance of expectations, that we share space with people that live a little bit different than we do, and respecting the individuals of our community that are out there every day dealing with drunks, out there every day dealing with the worst day of someone's life and their most emotional state, few facts, lots of feelings, and trying to do that calmly. And I had a nice reminder of how special Durham policing is. Going down to DC and dealing with DC officers, trying to get through security and stuff like that. Granted, they're doing a different job. They're protecting our nation's leaders and they're protecting our nation's infrastructure. And they've got to be a little bit more forward-leaning. But there's a far cry from every ride-along I do. I think we've had one fight that I've done with a ride-along, and we had one a drunken disorderly where an individual pushed an EMS worker while they were attending. And both of those did not end in arrest. Both of those did not end in anybody going to the hospital. It ended in a stern conversation. And don't do it again or you're going to have another standing tall conversation. But that's the policing I love. That's the policing that makes me feel safe. I've never felt as safe as I feel in Durham, New Hampshire. And not that I've lived everywhere, but I've lived a lot all over the east coast of the country and different countries. And I'm very impressed and proud that the officers that choose to work in Durham perform the way they do, and the leadership that helps facilitate a truly community environment. So thank you very much for what you're doing. Thank you, Chief Kelly and your cohorts for keeping us safe.
Councillor Sutton.
So I'd just like to note that I spend a lot of time reading about public safety departments across the country, and I've attended a lot of CALIA accreditation processes. And as part of those accreditation processes, we sit for a day and listen to department after department coming up and answering hard questions from CALIA accreditors. And what we have here, I have to say, is very unusual. We just have a high-performing department that has a great deal of trust. They're our department, the town's department, the council's department. And I think we put a lot of expectations on the department. We try to provide the resources that are reasonably needed and set expectations, and they really do a marvelous job. So just, congratulations all around. I think one public policy topic we'll need to talk further about going forward is the issue of body cameras. And that's something all the officers want. It's come forward in the past. And we decided for cost reasons that we were not going to go down that road. And part of the rationale, at least in my thinking, was the community has such trust in the officers, it's not needed. And typically, it's distrust of policing that causes a community to require their officers to wear body cameras. That's absent here. What we have here is the officers who are saying, please give us body cameras because we see them as a tool that can help us do our jobs. And so, again, future public policy conversation, but it ties into this type of survey result, I think.
Well, again, one more thank you all for your presentation and the work that you did.
Thanks these guys. They did a really good job.
All right.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right. We now have, under unfinished business, a continued discussion regarding the development of town council goals for fiscal year 2026, 2027.
So, two things. The first is I tried hard to listen to the conversation at the last meeting and tried to condense what was talked about fairly into a document. We've gotten some feedback over the weekend. I think that Tom Daly had some very helpful thoughts in terms of how to further consolidate that candidly I hadn't thought of because I'm so close to the process. So I appreciated that feedback. And Michael Lehrman also provided some alternative language that I think is worth considering. Also, I was thinking over the course of the weekend in reflecting on some of the feedback. We got 5 or 6 emails over the weekend regarding the goals, primarily focusing on the fiscal. I thought about it over the course of the day, and between 5:15 and 6:05, condensed my thoughts to writing. So I wanted to read them to you because I think it's worth considering it all. And I'm not saying I'm 100% right. This is just my perspective, and I thought it was important for you to hear. So as we refine our 2006-7 goals, I want to respond to the suggestion that we replace our traditional tax rate framework with a fixed numerical cap on annual municipal spending growth, such as the 1% limit that Councilor Lehrman had suggested, which was a fair suggestion. I fully share the concern about the rising tax burden on Durham residents and the need for budget discipline. The question is not whether we should be disciplined, but which tools will protect taxpayers while preserving the essential services and infrastructure they expect. Durham already operates a lean organizations. Our departments are small, staffing is tight, and we place a premium on collaboration, transparency, and continuous improvement as time permits. Yet to be clear, departments are already fully engaged, overstretched, and time is sparse. There is no reserve of avoidable waste, quote unquote, that can be eliminated by simply imposing an across-the-board cap. In this context, a rigid limit on year-over-year expenditure growth is much more likely to cut into core services and maintenance than to uncover hidden inefficiencies, which we already work hard to stamp out whenever they become clear. Fixed and largely non-discretionary costs such as wages, health insurance, utilities, fuel, and mandated compliance typically grow faster than 1% per year. When those costs increase faster than an artificial cap, the only way to achieve the target is to reduce service levels, defer maintenance, or postpone necessary capital work. Over time, that produces a gradual erosion of quality service or service quality and heightened long-term risk, even if the annual budget figure appears to be flat. We're already seeing the very practical implications of this. For example, as I mentioned last year, the police department requested body-worn cameras at an estimated cost of $100,000 to $200,000 and replacement of our aging 6-hour P320 pistols due to both age and safety concerns. These were not like nice-to-have items. They were relating directly to officer safety, public trust, and risk management. They were cut by me last year prior to my sending the budget to the council, which, as you remember, resulted in a 14+% increase without those types of things. Under a hard spending cap, how will the council respond to such requests when existing budgets are already effectively shrinking because of contractual obligations, energy, gasoline, and insurance costs increasing faster than the cap? In that world, the only way to fund body cameras or safer sidearms, if the council chooses to support one or the other, is to cut more deeply into other services. Now, we discussed eliminating curbside solid waste collection as a sizable savings as part of the 2006 budget process. Yet councils ultimately viewed that as a core service, and they did not wish to reduce it. Councils have also indicated that a proposal such as cutting library hours by 1 day per week feels akin to cutting the football team. Those reactions are understandable, I get it, yet they illustrate the central challenge under a very strict tax cap. A strict cap also would constrain our ability to respond to unforeseen needs. Severe weather occurs, infrastructure fails, and new state or federal mandates don't arrive on a very predictable schedule. Under an inflexible cap, even well-justified time-sensitive needs would first have to clear an arbitrary percentage hurdle rather than being evaluated on their merits and urgency. It's important as well to separate perception from reality around governmental waste or government waste. People who have not worked closely with municipal operations often assume government is inherently inefficient and that holding the line on spending is the primary way to get it under control. In some jurisdictions, that may be fair. In Durham, after many years of deliberate effort, we operate with minimal staffing, regional partnerships where they make sense, and highly detailed public budgets. We have a structurally lean operation that councilors all engage with during each budget process, not an out-of-control and unchecked spending problem. Large capital projects are the significant driver in our future fiscal forecast projections. The more fundamental challenge we face is the combination of New Hampshire's property tax framework and the structure of Durham's tax base. Tax bills are determined by both the municipal rate and the assessed value of each property. In a revaluation year, assessments adjust quickly to market conditions and burdens shift among property classes. For many residents, recent increases have been driven largely by strong market demand for certain types of property, particularly higher value residential and waterfront property, and away from multi-unit properties as UNH enrollments have diminished, which have raised assessments there. Those higher values are real and they absolutely reflect increased asset value. Even if the town's total budget were flat, a significant upward shift in the assessed value of any particular class of property would still result in higher tax bills for that class. It's out of our control here. It goes to market value. No municipal spending cap can fully insulate individual property owners from market-driven changes of that kind. This is why I continue to believe that Durham's structural issue is not a lack of discipline in day-to-day operations, but a narrow and unbalanced tax base. We rely heavily on residential property and comparatively less on taxable commercial value, and we have very strict zoning and engaged discerning residents who have been willing to accept higher property taxes in the past in exchange for preserving what they perceive to be quality of life, largely by opposing various development proposals. If we want to provide durable tax relief, the most constructive long-term strategy is to broaden and diversify the tax base while keeping the municipal tax rate as stable as possible. I'm also concerned about the behavioral incentives created by very rigid caps. When departments believe that any unspent funds will automatically be cut from their next budget and the caps will be tightened regardless of changing circumstances, the predictable response is to spend every remaining dollar by year end. That use it or lose it behavior, which I've worked hard to fight against for years and years and years, is precisely what critics of government spending usually hope to avoid. Our current practice instead encourages departments to spend only what they need, return savings, and have candid discussions about emerging needs and trade-offs. If we want staff and committees to continue to look for efficiencies and to support initiatives that broaden the tax base, they need to know that prudent behavior for the good of the town will be recognized and not penalized. The tax cap proposals on the table penalize such prudent behavior. Finally, I think we should be honest about the institutional environment in which we work. Durham's form of government is highly decentralized and participatory. Multiple boards and committees, public hearings, statutory timelines, and overlapping responsibilities make for very slow change. Additionally, the school district, the county, and the state are all separate governmental entities and do not fall within Durham's purview to limit spending, etc. Yet they drive much of the cost that impacts our local taxpayers. Significant structural change typically requires multi-year work, and hence our goals are often focusing on a 1 to 3 year look ahead. A fiscal framework based on an overly rigid annual cap tends to assume quick unilateral adjustments that our process is not designed to deliver. Thank you.
So I want to make some comments.
Sure.
First, there are a few of the things that you said that I disagree with. And I haven't had the opportunity to write something out and read it to folks, but I'm just going to wing it, so to speak. The first is from my perspective, we're not setting a tax cap, okay? The 589 was not arbitrary. Let's just keep it the same as it was this year. The 589 just happened to be the result after spending a lot of time looking at where we could probably find some efficiencies. And if you, for instance, take Mike's suggestion, and then you consider that next year we're going to be relieved of $277,000 of bond payments, that means in effect that expenses can rise 2.5, go and deliver services next year at the same cost as this year. And actually what it takes in terms of efficiencies, to me, comes out to be a very reasonable number when you're even looking at the number that was in the original fiscal forecast. So I would rethink framing this as a tax cap. I would frame this more as we're coming up with a realistic budget objective. And frankly, I think it needs to have two elements to it. I think it needs to have the tax rate, and then I do think it needs to have an element like Mike outlined. We're going to debate whether it's 1.25% or 1%, but you need both of them. And I think that what it does is it sets a realistic, challenging, but realistic objective. It's not like what was suggested is, oh, you know what, it should be 575. We're going to challenge you. We're going to beat you up to it. It's looking at what the forecast is and recognizing that you can't keep expenses the same next year, coming up with a reasonable increase. I think that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And if we don't do that, then there's no guidance.
So I agree with what you said. I would favor the historical approach where we've kept the tax rate constant, and then the growth in the tax base would allow for some measure of additional spending to cover the cost of CPI and other such things. I get concerned when there's both a constraint on that and a constraint on what was budgeted in terms of a finite dollar amount.
But I think that one of the things that's being lost in the conversation is if the bonding obligation didn't go down nearly $300,000 next year, then we wouldn't be talking about 589. It's actually worked against us in that when we looked and totaled up what we thought were a realistic expenses for next year, okay? Basically that 2.5% increase. And we divided it by the projected valuation. We just happened to end up at the 589. And I think that we need to have that as an objective. And then we also need to have an objective that's clearly tied to the expenses. So that, for instance, I know it's very unlikely to happen, but suppose the valuation increases $40 million, okay? Does that mean then we'll keep it at, 589, but then we're going to have all sorts of new money that we can go and spend? We shouldn't be doing that, because if next year's tough, the year after is going to be even worse. And, I think that maybe at some point in the future, we can step back from this. But again, we're dealing with, as we go into 28, an additional $1 million hitting the expense line for bonding. And I just think saying to a town administrator that we want a budget and we're just setting a budget objective, not a tax cap.
But the bond savings that you had identified, I was under the impression that even without that expense, the fiscal forecast was still projecting more than a 2% increase in the tax rate for next year.
So
to negate that and keep it at zero, that means additional cuts somewhere. Okay. And I would say if the goal was the current rate or less, if we're able to bring it in under, then we do. And the council would ask those types of questions.
So it was 2.5% increase in fiscal year 27, but that already gave you the benefit of the bond, so the effective increase in the expenses was 3.55%. And this is not a time when we can be at 3.55%. And so all we're doing is ratcheting it down 1.25%. Okay.
Councilor Lerman?
Yeah, I would just like to comment, because I kind of think some of that was directed towards me, and since I was sort of an initiator originally in the conversation about trying to put in an expense cap. And the first thing I want to say is that I don't think anywhere that I have suggested in either verbal conversations or in anything that I've sort of tossed out, any suggestion of a tax cap like, the legislative RSA type tax cap. I'm interpreting this a tax cap. So the idea, the first thing I just want to put on the board for any public watching also, is that my interpretation of the intent here is to set forward a prospective goal for you to manage with the department heads in doing the budget, and not wind up with what I witnessed here last year at the end of the year, to the down to the wire, looking for 1,000 here, 500 there, and we'll cut this, we'll cut that, nickel and diming literally at the last minute to try and save some money. So if you go in with an idea of where you're going to begin with, it makes it a lot easier, because you got a long time to then have discussions and come back at some point if it's necessary and say, wait a second, guys, this is not going to work because here's the reasons why I can justify, rationalize. You guys make a decision if you want to stick to it, or we're going to have to do this, this, and this. But it lets that process flow. The second thing I want to say is, despite what you're talking about is historically we've had it this way, I would say that the evidence is that historically it hasn't worked, because we've now gotten ourselves into a situation where I'm not in any way suggesting it's anyone's fault. Partly it's just everyone's a victim of circumstances between what the state's done, what inflation has done from post-COVID, what the job market does, all kinds of things. But the bottom line reality still is we have a problem. And I don't think it is realistic to think that doing what we've been doing is going to allow us to get to a successful point. And I'm very concerned that when I see the trajectory of what the state legislature has been doing over several years, not just like, oh, it's this legislative session went crazy on us. No, it's been a consistent trend. They're pushing stuff down, they're cutting their own revenues. It's going to, in my interpretation, it's going to be more problematic. We see the same thing now at the federal level. I'd like to think it's going to change sooner rather than later, but I think we've got at least a few more years of it. So I think there's going to be more pressure. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to get to a point, because what we're talking about now is these goals for this year. The public hasn't even felt yet, they won't feel until December and late November, the impact of the decisions that were made just last November, December. And I don't think that's going to be a great impact, because I'm pretty firmly convinced in my mind that there's a substantial number, maybe it's not the majority, but a substantial number of people that even today don't realize what the tax hit will be in December. They just are not tuned in and dialed in to what's going on. And I don't think they're going to be happy with it. So I think we need to be very much take a different tact than we've taken. The second thing, from sort of a personal history perspective, is in my career, I have had the growth and project revenue growth. You always have to make sure that you're protected. You can make your estimates for revenue and you can hope for the best, but you better not build a budget totally dependent upon it. You're going to wind up in a hole. And I don't think it should be any different for the town. I don't think that it's uncommon, unusual, or unrealistic for town departments and a town administrator to manage a budget goal, not a hard tax cap, to say, we want to try and achieve this. Now, whether it was plus 1% or plus 2%, I said to Jim today, it's like, we can debate that discussion. That wasn't my intent to say it's that last year plus 1%. It's some baseline, and as I tried to even be more sophisticated, it was like saying either it's the budget from last year or the current year now, or as we go through the budget year, and you've just had 3 months, at the 6-month and 9-month mark, you're going to have year-to-date numbers that you can look at. And if you think that you're confident that those are good numbers, that's another question perhaps, but if you're confident that those are good numbers, you can also look at those and make a relative, sanity check, so to speak, and say, okay, this is what we're running this year. Can we do it, plus 2 or 3% next year, or 1%, or whatever the number is? I don't see how we can, in all good conscience, as council members, at this point, given the tax load that is increased significantly and dramatically in the town, and we know is destined to increase again in this December's tax bill, and again in December of 28, or November of 28, we need to change the way we've been doing things. And we're not asking, I'm not suggesting there's anything, in my mind, is anything radical about basing a budget on our expenses. It's done that way, and I don't think it will lead to tragic consequences, because it's a goal.
Councilor Welsh?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One is, last year, 3 of us tried to cut the budget, and absolutely no one from town came in and said, you have to cut the budget, or why don't you cut this? Nothing. We got nothing from the town. What's happened is, it's gotten the town very upset, is the shift of taxes to areas that have been assessed much higher than they used to be. So you're shaking your head, Mike, but no one came in, okay, last year. No one. Why didn't they come in during the budget? They came in after, as soon as the reassessment was done, and people thought, holy crap.
I was in here
budget.
last May, before the revaluation was done, talking about taxes.
Okay, I wasn't here last May. Fine. That's immaterial. I don't mean to step on you, and I don't mean to be snarky, but I understand that. But my point is, no one came in, no one was mad about the taxes until there was a reassessment, and then people got very upset. So let's not say the town's been out of control, like I see some of the stuff, for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden, God, we've got this huge tax hit, because no one came in. And there were even legitimate discussions that maybe the people in town were fine with the taxes up until last year. Now, last year, I agree, it went crazy. We're up 15%. People haven't even seen that. It's going to be a disaster. But I just wanted to make that point. It's because to listen to some people, you'd think, we were spending money like drunken sailors, and we haven't been. We haven't been. But on the other side of that, going back to your comments, Todd, I have to disagree. When I came back, I found we had 2 additional firemen. We have a new environmental officer, full-time. So we have 3 people who we've never had before. 2 additional firemen and Veronique, whatever her title is. So we have 3 people we never had before, never needed before. Town's not growing, we added 3 people. That's a lot. We added, I'll throw the police department under, we added a dog. We added the Madbury project, which, given where we are now, we may well have thought differently on adding that project. So we've added all these things and sort of, agreeing with Mike on this. We've done a lot of spending that we really didn't need to do. If you looked back 5 years ago, we didn't have the firemen, we didn't have the environmental officer, we didn't have the dog, we didn't have the Madbury project. But because we put pressure, we the council put pressure on the town, you guys did some very creative stuff that really helped. You sold half the financial analyst, you didn't sell her, you shared her. You sold the spots in parking. The police got a less expensive Kalia, and they didn't need to hire the person who they had asked for. They raised the charges in skating. So I think we could have a tax cap or something like that. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think after we raised taxes 15% last year in a 3% environment, it might be nice to give some of that back. So I think we have to keep thinking and being creative. And as to use it or lose it, Todd, that's on you. You have to make sure that people aren't spending money so that they don't lose it. You and Gail or whoever the new person is, because every organization has that. And so you just have to be very careful that people aren't doing that. So that's my 2 cents. I think we have to be very aggressive this year in cutting expenses or let's say managing expenses. So I agree with the harsher, more difficult challenges and I think, I think Jim's is ultimately very reasonable. I think I would go even perhaps harder than that, but Emily had a good idea. I like some of the points that Thomas has made, that Mike has made, and I think we should be very aggressive on this, or else we're going to be sitting here when people get their taxes in November, and the poor people have been reassessed dramatically, are going to be up 15% more. It's going to be very tough on those people to manage that. So
I want to make one. I'm sorry.
You're right.
I just wanted to make sure that folks got the language that I emailed out, because I do think we need a 2-pronged approach on this, and I think that combining, and I agree, I don't think it's a cap, it is a goal, but I think that it should be based on the tax revenue that is raised by the town, and not solely tied to the rate, because I think what we've seen is that the assessed values can jump all over the place. And that gives, some room for growth, the appropriate scaling of services as the tax base grows, but lately the market has been doing kind of crazier things. And potentially that's what we're seeing in the next couple years. And so I think that continuing to have a goal for a tax rate based on the 1,000 per assessed value, we keep that language in there. I think that, Councilor Lawson has given us a great target for that. If we combine it with a goal for the revenues raised, that also takes into, it just gives us that perspective in terms of if the tax valuations go crazy again, we have something else we can tie it to. And I think that what is, great about the town council goals is that they're revisited every year. And so we'll have something to look back at next year that has an example of both approaches, and the year after that and the year after that. And so I don't think that this is locking us into a permanent tax cap. I see it again as a goal. And I've seen other towns where the town administrator puts forth 2 budgets, and one is the budget that meets the goal, which would be in this case meeting both the assessed value and the overall revenues raised, and then an administrator's recommendation. And I would be very comfortable with seeing some difference between the two, because I think it's actually, there's an advantage. If you come back to us and the budget that you shows us has service cuts that we don't want to cut, at least we can go to the residents and say, well, we looked at that option and nobody liked it, so we're not going to pursue that. So I would be very comfortable with, something that is your recommendation, and I know Newmarket does this, I don't know how common it is, but certainly other towns do, your budget and then one that meets the town goals, or is as close to as you can reasonably get within, meeting all the other, there are requirements that, you can't negotiate on. And so, but I do think those two pieces are important, because I think we've seen where assessed values can be misleading, either because they jump because the market is doing what it's doing, or, there's also situations where if we have a whole bunch of development come on, say in 2028, 2029, we get the PUD passed and then all of a sudden it's coming on, we don't want to up our services, scale our services to the full value of that, because those values will immediately, basically, proportionately decrease, right? New development has its greatest value when it is new. And then it will be tied to inflation, but those buildings and that infrastructure will start to devalue a little bit. And so if we go up to our kind of max spending with the valuation there, we're kind of spending up to something that is going to decline. And so I think we really need both.
So just a couple comments. First, much of what you said I agree, but that's why we need to have two metrics: tax rate and a metrics for maximum allowable expenditures. Because if the revenue is greater because of non-property tax revenue, okay, we can't go and increase services with that additional revenue, because in 2028, based on the town's forecast, we're going to be looking at a tax rate that's up about $1. And so this is like starting to do the legwork, preparing for that. And the one thing you said that I'm going to disagree with you is that after commercial property is built, it will inevitably devalue. It devalues on my accounting books because I depreciate it, but from an assessing standpoint, it doesn't generally devalue, because the assessment is not based on the depreciated value, it's based on an income model. And generally, an older property that's 10 years old is still, capable of producing the same amount of revenue, but incremented, for inflation. So I would say that it's appreciating in value, but it appreciates commercial for a different reason, and that's because of the fact that it's assessed based on an income model for the type of property it is.
I'd also just like to go on record for the town department heads, because if you recall, Todd, when I came back from doing the rounds of orientation, I complimented you and said, what a great bunch of department heads. These guys are like really smart, really on the ball. This is a great crew. I've never suggested, and I don't want anyone to think that from your comments that I was intimating anywhere that there's slop somewhere to be cut or there's excess things. It may be a fairly tight ship. I have also operated very tight ships, and there's always room for a little more efficiency. So it doesn't mean cutting meat. It may be finding a more efficient way of doing something, or pairing up with somebody else as a partner, or what have you. So I think there's opportunities, and I just want to make that so that visiting department heads watching this later, that they don't think that that's what I was thinking.
Councilor Gomes? So I've been listening, and I kind of have been watching over the last month or so about the budget. Excuse me. I'm looking more towards the expenditure part and where we can, what we can do. I kind of have an intimate knowledge of what goes on in the town, in the departments. because I do so much work with the IT department, we do things for everybody. So we see how it's working every place. And what I see is over the last year or 2 years, we can't get leaner than these people have gotten. We've got a clerk's office that's closed for a day. You know, one mistake we made, or was made here, was going half-time with the DCAT coordinator. People want their meetings all the time being broadcast, and you did not allow for full-time. You took it out. Well, our DCAT coordinator is retiring at the end of June. We don't have anybody. The only way we're going to get somebody is to go full-time, because nobody's going to do it for half-time to come in and sit at a meeting. You know, so that's going to be something that it's going to have to be factored in. But I honestly look at this budget that we do, and I look at it from the IT standpoint. Everything we do, the same thing is happening here. So I think we've got to be very careful about saying, well, we can keep it the same as last year, unless you want to get rid of some services and give it to some people, because that's the only way we're going to do it. When you say we want efficiencies, I don't see them. Honestly, we've already combined things together. We've gone half times. We've done everything we can do. So if we do some kind of a cap to Todd and say, this is all we're going to spend, then you have to be willing, and I have to be willing to say we're going to give up something.
But I want to be clear, the goal we've been talking about is not saying to Todd he needs to figure out how to spend the same amount next year as this year. It's taking this year and increasing it 2.5%, which is just less than 1% lower than what was in the forecast. So we're not saying you have to keep it the same expense. We're coming up with an expense that represents a 2.5% increase.
I'm okay with that. I'm just saying that's my goal is to, yeah, I guess, I don't know what's going to happen with the income. And I'll tell you, with all the things we're doing with the commercial and the height of the buildings and so forth, we have no idea what's really going to be built. And even if it is, it's going to be years before we see something from it. You know, is a developer, sorry, Jeff, I don't know what your plans are, but is the developer going to say, oh yeah, we're going to build this building and we're going to get professional people to come live in these buildings, and boy, we're going to be great because everybody's going to be working the downtown. I don't see that happening. Yeah, that would be wonderful. Wonderful, but I've been here a long time, and honestly, at this point in time, I don't see it. And it may be years and years, so I don't know what we're going to get from that commercial to get it up. I think we're stuck in this situation for a while, where we have the residents taking the brunt of things.
So, good.
One more thing, because it may affect what you say. I think that what there has been is a lot of work done thinking about the budget, Todd, but there has not been communication with you and with Gail. So, you know, there's been communication with Gail, but mainly not about the budget, about data coming in. And, you know, I think that maybe we have an opportunity to get together and really talk through it and work through the numbers, maybe identify places where we've made assumptions that are incorrect or whatever. But I think we can come up with numbers that you know that the town and the council are comfortable with.
So,
We'll do you after.
So I just wanted to note that several years ago, when the council goal was to keep the tax rate flat, when we did that basically based upon the prior year's rate, not based upon a revaluation number that was coming. And if we knew there was a revaluation coming, we still worked with the old data and tax base to hold the rate flat. And we were able for 4 years to do that while also addressing a host of infrastructure challenges. And today, our infrastructure is pretty good, with the exception of the fire station, which is kind of a long-range issue. I did just want to note, we haven't talked about the rate for next year or this past year. The number that Councillor Lawson had suggested, he had said the 2026 level of 589, and I was reading that as the 2025 rate, which is actually less, 512. So in my mind, we were talking about staying at the 512 rate, not the 589 rate. So I was not understanding what Councillor Lawson was explaining earlier in the meeting, because I was using a different rate in my head, which I now better understand where you're going with it.
Yeah, if it's 512, we might as well lock up
Yeah,
the
yeah.
doors.
But my goal in leading with this is, I think the biggest and most perplexing challenge with the goals is the tax rate and the budget. And I thought it was important to have a really thoughtful conversation around it. And my goal was not in any way to attack you, Councilor Lerman. It's just we received several other emails over the weekend, and Tom Daly was one who provided very thoughtful feedback. Michael Morneau was another, Ben Bulkey. There were two others whose names I can't remember, I'm sorry. But I just thought it was important to state for the public, at least my belief, that we work very hard to run a lean shop and to safeguard Durham tax dollars and to do it as efficiently as we can. And yes, we can always do better, and ratcheting down the budget forces people to be creative, which isn't a bad thing. But I just want to be realistic around the challenges of inflation and equipment costs. And as now part-time code officer, which at some point we will greatly struggle to find another part-time person, we'd likely need to go full-time again. So we're so tight, there's not a lot of breathing room with how we are now. And I just want everyone to understand that going into this process.
Councilor Register.
Hey, thanks. So a couple things. Don't want to get too crazy with the comments because we're only working on one goal of many. Aren't really getting any objectives set for this period of time. And I also want to acknowledge I'm not a finance guy. I've never run a budget outside of a company command level budget. It was several $1 million, but it was use it or lose it. And so I spent every penny. I have been in different climates, whether you have the transparent, good faith climate. I've been in the climate of do everything, keep your budgeting officer, like a mushroom. You feed them crap and you keep them in the dark, and you do what you need to do to get your stuff by. You put stuff on the road and stuff things in containers, and I've been a part of those organizations too. I've also been a part of the organizations where they steal from each other because they don't have enough to get by. I have stolen parts of generators off of Navy equipment to get my generators running because we didn't have enough money to do it. We need to aggressively push back against the narrative that we have blue. We need to aggressively push back against the narrative that we have any mismanagement of funds. We get a noteworthy audit every single year from an external auditor. I sit in, not on every single one, but on many of the pre-council budget conversations. And the department heads are presenting a good faith budget based on previous data, based on current expenses, and based off expectations and demands for services. The department heads are not mismanaging the town's money. The department heads, nor Todd, are siphoning money into a private bank account in the Caymans. The demand for services has risen with the quality of life. While we may not be stuffing more people into the town yet, and I would say that's an inventory issue more than a desirability issue, we are also losing students That is less people downtown spending money. That's less likely that our businesses are going to survive, that we still have. We've already shelled up Wildcat, we've got Chow, we've got, there was one other one that was, Tide Line's probably going to shut their doors. Like, we're losing interest from the community. We're losing tourists, we're losing parents of students, potentially losing our working class folks. And we are already operating as on the special day for the login. No cataclysmic event happens when the weather or in the national scene. We've been in 2 conflicts in the last year alone that were unplanned for. Gas is $4.50 a gallon. That's not anything the town could have planned for. And that absolutely impacts our delivery of services. And to sit here and pretend that we're going to be able to offer the same package while pushing the rate to a previous year's level is a fantasy. We need to, and I want to acknowledge that we have to do something about the finances. Regardless of whose fault it is, people are struggling. People can't stay in their homes. And I want to live here. I'm not a millionaire. You know, I want people who are able to work at Hannaford, work at the police department, or work at the library, and have an ability to actually be a part of the town that they're investing their care into. And we can't do that and expect everybody who works here to say the same. And we owe it to have the hard conversation. I agree with the folks that we're talking about cutting our current taxes, potentially even adding an artificial tax cap. I understand that we're trying to help people, but we have to have the real conversation of that's personnel. Those are positions that we are going to be looking to terminate. We're not going to be saving money by asking the police to not drive X amount of hours during a day. Now, we can do some efficiency things based off best practices from other folks, but that's not going to reduce the budget by percentages. We fought for several town council meetings where we had some trained eyes who were looking at the budget, and we reduced it down to $250,000-ish. And it was still a 14% increase. And it's not like the state's helping us out. They are continuing to downshift all the financial responsibilities of being a governmental organization. We still have to meet those needs. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that if we're going to have this conversation, we need to deprioritize or understand which are non-essential positions that we're looking to target, so that we can A, have an acknowledgement of what we're looking at, and B, give a good faith announcement to the employees that have dedicated their efforts, their care for high performance. We just got a fantastic review from the survey. I've never had a bad interaction with anybody in town that works for the town. We have a business administrator and a planner who any revenue in the town.
So I want to make one thing really clear, Council Register. We're not talking about a budget next year that is the same expense profile as this year. We are talking about a budget next year that takes the expenses for police, fire, DCAT, all the expenses we have, and increases it 2.5%. So we're not saying do the same thing at greater costs with less money. We're saying 2.5%. And what that does is it results in a realistic look for efficiencies over what we forecasted for next year. Efficiencies that are in line with what the council did. And I don't think, I certainly am not talking about laying off people, riffing people. I think it's always healthy to kind of look at staffing as staffing changes and things like that. But that's not what this conversation is about. And I think right now it's not appropriate to be talking about laying off people and things like that. We're talking about increasing the expense budget, but just reining it in a little bit to get us ready for 2028 when we're not going to be able to keep the tax rate, where it's at today, where it's projected to go up to 681. So I would just be careful about the narrative that we're creating. And we're just leveraging, by the way, again, the fact that next year our bond payments go down, and that's not free money to ramp up expenses.
And I'm for that too. If that's a goal, I'm fine with that as a goal. But do realize that there's two parts to it. It's what the goal is if you can hit that, but it's also what we take in. And we don't really have a lot of control over some of that. We don't know what the state's going to continue to do. We don't know what the school is going to do in terms of hitting people with budget. So if we give that goal to Todd and say, Todd, this is what we'd like you to do, when push comes to shove, what is he going to do when the people come in and say, well, our anticipated revenues are way down,
Well, then it's going to be a conversation that we're going to have with the council here. But again,
I don't mind seeing it as a goal.
But again, maybe there's more, but I mean, these are not numbers we're pulling out of the air. It's based on the town's fiscal forecast that was part of the budget package.
I also just want to say, it's certainly not my intent. I don't think it's anybody else's intent. When we talk about looking for efficiencies, I do not expect that, other than maybe some people suggesting areas to look at, that anybody sitting around this table, with the exception of maybe Todd, is going to find efficiencies. The issue is, and it's been my experience over a long career, that the efficiencies that we found will be surprise efficiencies that nobody here thought about, but the department heads have ideas because they have friends that work in other departments. And if you challenge them to find something more efficient, they can do it. And I do think that we have very good quality department heads here, and I think they're probably quite capable of it. But it depends on what you ask them. If you say, we just want to keep things where they were, the tax rate's the same, don't increase the things too much, okay, I won't. But if you challenge them and say, we got a really fiscal issue here, we got very big concerns, we need to find ways to make things more efficiently. Tell me what we can do. Then stand back and be prepared for surprise and see what they come up with. They're probably quite capable of it. There's new efficiencies that are becoming available every day. Technology evolves every day. There's technology that can be applied to the police, to the fire, to the Department of Public Works. So there are gains that can be had. That doesn't mean you have to slash it. I'm not suggesting slashing any positions. But yes, through attrition, you might say, you know what? Next year, if we lose this position, we're not going to replace it with whatever because we can do this instead. So just to be clear for everyone's, that's where I'm coming from.
So are you comfortable with Councilor Lawson's suggestion?
You shouldn't be.
Are we?
No, you shouldn't be until we have more of a chance to sit down and really communicate and go through the numbers, and this is where this number comes in, and this is the assumption, and I think we're going to end up with what we're talking about, but I think we're going to do it in a way that there's a better understanding of.
Well, and I think Councilor Friedrich's proposal addresses some of this, but I'm unclear in my mind, and something to talk about is, what happens if the state comes back next year and says, sorry, we've just cut your highway block grant fund by $500,000. Does that, what does that mean? How do we respond to that as part of the budget process? So we've lost revenue. Or
what you don't do is use it to increase expenses and services next year, because you need to essentially bank that with the residents, because you're going to hit them with a $1 increase when we go into 2028. And if we didn't have that big number being driven by bonding in 2028, then we could have, conversations about what maybe are some of the things that really add value to the residents and residents would really want and things, but we can't have that, our hands are tied because of 2028.
And the other question I had or thought I had is, once we receive our audit for 2025 and we have a clear sense of where fund balance sits, at what point might we have a conversation about whether, if there's sufficient fund balance, to use some of that to offset some of our future projected debt with cash to drive down that impact in 28?
So,
with a one-time payment that isn't recurring.
What is our usual goal for the percent of our fund balance?
5 to 9?
It's like 5 to 8%.
So
generally.
So, I think using fund balance to reduce your debt obligations for projects that you have already committed to is a good conversation to have. The conversation that I'm going to be vehemently against having is using fund balance to reduce the tax burden in any one year, because it makes you feel good that one year and it hits you even harder the following year. So I think that is a good conversation to have, but what that does is it provides help for that steep increase in 2028, and it shouldn't open the gates to more expenditures in 2027, in my opinion.
We might need to carry that expenditure in 27 as a non-tax rate impact in order to spend it, in order to pay off that obligated future capital project, so we don't have to bond it. But, yeah.
So you're saying we'd recognize it as an expense if we use the bonding?
Well, if we were to use fund balance to pay off a capital project, we would typically include that as an appropriation in 27, so we can then spend the money in 27, but the offsetting revenue source would be undesignated fund balance, not the general fund.
Right.
So there's a zero tax impact, but
right. The only impact is to the balance of the fund balance.
And just to broaden the conversation, so we're not only talking about 3B, but on the subject of finance, I think it might be another thing just to put on the table, not to get too much in depth right now, but another worthy consideration in my mind in terms of goals would be to look at, over the course of the year, other financial policies that might be developed to help shape future directions in terms of things specifically like how the fund balance should be managed, what should be the ranges that we should go after, things that it can and shouldn't be used for. The whole idea in terms of how capital expenditures are planned and targeted for the future, and what those levels probably should be. Should be guidelines or ranges of how much you want to take, how much debt you want to carry forward, which, from what I understand, and I could be totally mistaken because it's just cursory type questions I had, it doesn't sound like those things exist in terms of actual hard fiscal policies. And I think some towns do have them. And I think it's just suggesting it's worthy perhaps of a conversation as we go through the year as a goal to have those conversations and see if that's the things we might want to tackle so that you can better set ground rules for future councils as guidance.
But the SIP does roll into the projected bond schedule, which then rolls into the fiscal forecast. So
we do have a fund balance policy that the council adopted that sets those parameters.
And the audit usually speaks to that also, speaks to where we are in terms of those things. Michael?
So we have more of a meeting to do. We've gotten a good discussion on goal number 3. I'd like to bring up that it was mentioned earlier, Mr. Tom Daly's comments that was sent around in terms of consolidating goals and combining goals, which as I went through and penciled those out, I believe most of them made very good sense. We're not really in combining them and coordinating them. We could go through it again, but Administrator Selig said that he also went through them and found them to be quite helpful. And so perhaps for the next iteration of these goals, those could be incorporated as the next draft.
Yeah, I just want to, if we could vote on that, on the inclusion of the drafts to make it a little bit more solid. That way we're not undoing it the next time we sit around the table. You know, like this is the draft we're focusing on. We're not going to go past the original. I'm okay with consolidating. I don't want to fight that. I think that makes sense to me. I think the biggest fight for the goals is going to be our budgetary concerns.
Right, and what I heard about that was that perhaps Councilor Lawson meets with the administrator.
No, I'm not saying that right now. I'm
the final recommendation. It sounded like you weren't ready to make that final recommendation right now on goal 3 in terms of the 589, or were you?
I think
next time.
It'd be nice to have everybody on board.
I'm not trying to ham us on 3B. I'm saying for the consolidation of the points that Mr. Daly, yourself, and Mr. Selig have agreed make sense. I say we vote to make that the working draft document so that we don't go back and forth in version control, back and forth. Actually, I kind of like the way this sounded, blah, 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 blah. I want to spend as little time on nuance or a little time on semantics and more time on the meat as we can.
I agree.
Yeah, I haven't had enough. I did a first read of Mr. Daly's goals, and it was like somebody taking a fresh look at them, and it was helpful. You know, I think everybody's been looking at it too close, but I'm not prepared to vote on it. I'm prepared to work on it, but I'm not going to vote that on setting a direction now, and I'm not sure what comments might come in this week that we want to incorporate into it.
Would people be agreeable to say, for the sake of looking at what the suggestions will look like, asking Todd to do a draft version, reshaping along the lines that Mr. Daly outlined, so we can look at it?
Yeah.
And then we can talk about it at the next meeting, and if everybody's happy, then we can say, yeah, okay, we're ready to go, it's right here.
Yeah, Todd said he agreed with a lot of them, so.
It'll be easier to understand when you see it on paper as opposed to try to say, oh, 23 is going to be over here.
Yeah.
I mean, as a spirit of the document, I don't think it changed anything
Substance.
about, yeah, there wasn't substance. It was just about organization and combining that created the same theme, but more efficiently.
And I do think Todd is going to have to take a hard look at some things. For instance, the Mill Pond Dam and Madbury Road are going to take an inordinate amount of staff time. And yes, I agree that that's a capital improvement and it's defining the capital, but I still think a goal about the completion of those projects acknowledges that it's going to take an inordinate amount of our staff time. And so there are some recommendations there that I think we may want to think a little bit about.
I guess, and I've said this probably last year, is those are tasks that are already assigned, and they don't, to me, they just don't need to be in the document. But that's just a difference of opinion, but we acknowledge, I think we all know that it's a lot of work, and, you know, all the construction and anything that DPW does is, it's very visible, the amount of work that has to be done. But putting it on a list here doesn't stop it from happening, and I just don't think it needs to be there.
Yeah.
Well, that goes to the audience of the purpose of the document, right? Who is the audience?
Yeah.
In my mind, the audience is us and Todd.
And we already know that those are the things that are
So we don't
being
forget,
worked.
but yeah.
They're priorities, obviously, we're putting a lot of money into it, and we've
I
put
understand.
years of effort into them, years of planning into
I
it.
understand that's a good point.
I just thought it was important, at least through this phase of the discussion, for everyone to realize and acknowledge these are big things that we're going to be dealing with. And I think the fair and free election issue, we're going to do that, but it's going to take a lot of work as well, and I just wanted to flag it.
It's also of utmost concern of several individuals in town as well, so it's definitely worth something to stand out for.
Yeah, so.
Well, perhaps we could do that and then move on with our meeting here. Are we okay with getting those consolidated and refining further? Go ahead.
I thought Councillor Lehrman offered a very useful addition under purpose of town council goals, and I didn't know what your thoughts were about that.
Well, as I said in the cover note, it was just a stab at creating a purpose, and it may or may not be exactly on target, but my intent is that for any viewer, now or in the future, and particularly for the public, I will probably try to be more sensitive on those issues than not, that when people read stuff, that they understand what is it. So it's to sort of the points that Todd was making with regards to we can't get any more efficient. I think trying to lay out in the purpose what they are and they aren't is that it's not meant to be like a pass-fail exam that, you make it or you don't make it, and if you don't make it, it's goals. It's just goals. It's what are we aiming for? What's our direction? And that's what I think if you lay that out in some fashion and understand what it's a shared responsibility, I think that's why I put that in there. It's not just the council, it's got to be the council with the administration for most of the stuff. Some of the stuff that we could do ourselves, that should be just our thing. But yeah, I think it's worth putting something for goals. And if I missed a boat somewhere, we could fine tune it, but.
I think there were a few areas where I think it could be slightly fine-tuned, but I liked it. I thought it was very useful for you all.
Good.
I would put that in there.
Yep. Perhaps you could add that to the draft.
And while we're having this broader discussion and having such a meaty conversation on this, I'll come back to the issue which I've raised before, and I know because I've talked with Todd about this in other set of circumstances. The desire to try and create some more measurable aspects of the goals. It's not to pin someone down and say, this is going to happen by the third quarter, and if it doesn't happen, someone's going to be in trouble. It's to set goals that we can sort of measure ourselves by, and I think that is helpful on some of these things to actually anticipate what it is we're trying to achieve. And if you can actually articulate, the thing about education that I put in there originally was much more detailed, and then it kind of got abbreviated. But the intent wasn't to say, if we come across something that looks like educational need, we might think about it. It's like, no, we should probably be proactively say, as an organization, and this is where I make the analogy to like a board. A good board will also look what its educational needs are and say to the CEO, we should have education on this, this, and this over the course of the year. So I'm saying prospectively say, as a goal, we should look inward at some point when we have a breathing 10, 15 minutes and say, what would benefit the council for education? And then we can sort of set forth and say, okay, let's try and do this and this over the course of the year.
Michael, I think when I was on the council, I seem to remember Todd giving us an update on how he was progressing with those goals, pretty much quarterly. Did you not do that?
Yes, we do that.
Yeah, we do that still, but I think this is more.
He's talking like.
Are these more on specific?
This is the SMART goal
things.
things. You might have missed that. When I originally put it in, it was talking the SMART goals, so they're measurable and time constrained.
The ones that are measurable.
Right. So you put some measures in certain things. Like one of the things was in there. I'm not going to remember off the top of my head about trying to do things with the school, trying to set up more intercommunication with the schools. What does that mean? Does that mean we're going to have a meeting with them once this year? Or does it mean we'd like to have quarterly meetings? That's the aspirational goals. We'd like to try and meet at least quarterly. So if you say at least quarterly, at the end of the year you can say, oh, we met once, that's something.
Well, I can tell you something about something like that. Before our present superintendent, Todd met with him pretty much weekly. Every week we'd have lunch quite often.
I know.
This particular one.
We can back off.
That may be a poor example from
Yeah.
say if you want to try and do it quarterly,
That's fine.
let's try and do it quarterly. As opposed to, we'll try and do it once in a year, maybe.
We're just saying, we want to try and do it, not saying anything else, is where we're
Yeah.
Okay.
We would like to finish on time tonight. So,
Great. First meeting. Love it.
Thank you all for that really, I thought, very useful discussion. Thank you.
And now we have our roundtable. And there was conversation at the beginning about the Ballard Street and big questions from the town, from some of the public speakers. Did you want to follow up on that at all? Did anybody want to follow up on Ballard Street?
Well, I'm not sure I can talk about the Ballard Street,
Versus
but
Main Street.
basically, at the planning board, they worked on providing the zoning change for the 5 stories, which is what you guys will see today. It's part of the agenda. And we scheduled last Wednesday as an additional meeting by the planning board to follow up with the zoning change with the commitment on the, architectural designs. So the whole meat of what was requested by Cardin in the previous town council meeting. It was decided that if we can move things along at a pace that isn't, snail pace that we're used to get the 5-story thing to you and then follow up as quickly as possible with the standards that includes the setbacks. So again, Michael came with the original document. There was an awful lot of discussion on it. And we said that we would bring that forward for the public comments and then, and make sure that met the requirements that the town council wanted. So what you're seeing today is the 5 stories with a follow-up on the standards. To make it faster, we said, okay, we're only gonna take, so we didn't slow things down, we'll take and release the setbacks without finishing the architectural standards document, send you what you wanted in that request, and that we would follow up, obviously with continuing to focus on finishing the balance of that document, which is very close to being completed. So I don't know what went on with Ballard Street, what Michael might have mentioned. I just know that in the end, we have a document that you guys will see. It's not, it's going forward with public comment. If there's new feedback in there, it seemed like when we left that the public that stayed there the whole time for that meeting was happy when they left. So I'm not sure between then and today and a lot of the public comments that came through I didn't have time to look at because I just haven't had time to look at them without enough notice. So I think what we were trying to do was come forward with what made sense. We added the 50-foot setback, which we thought would help with possible, cool beautification of that end of Main Street. And if we get a lot of feedback at the public comment, not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, then we should be making some adjustments on it. But that was the plan. Take the 5-story thing, put the zone together, and then follow that up as quickly as possible, again, with the schedule in mind of the public hearing, and then the ability to have that covered for the people that are concerned with the setbacks.
So,
go ahead, let him finish up on that.
Just sort of add to that, there was a lot. The public comments were not just at the beginning of the meeting. It was a dialogue throughout the meeting, quite honestly. It was a smaller group.
I mean, I think...
So there was constant dialogue going on throughout the meeting if you didn't watch it, in terms of feedback on a lot of stuff. And one of the things consciously was talked about at the meeting was bringing this so that you all would see this, and if anybody had any drastic objectives to sort of put it on the table now before we get to the public hearing. But Michael Barrett had assured everyone that the way this was laid out,
Was what?
Things could be changed in and out of it, so we put a lot more things in, and if you want to take something out, we can take it out at the public hearing or after the public hearing without having to repost another public hearing. And specifically, just to point out to people, was the issue with regards to C, which had been my offering, came directly from one of the public comments. So one of the public members there was referencing the architect Doug Bank, because the question was raised like, okay, so if we're talking about these tall buildings in downtown are going to be so objectionable, why aren't they objectionable when they're on the university campus? And the architect, Doug Bank, apparently said, who was involved with the designs, was like, well, one of the things is, none of them are up against the road. They're all 50 feet, the ones along Main Street are all 50 feet back. So my response was, from having looked at the maps and the GIS thing, it's like the lot 66 Main Street particularly is pretty deep, as is the M&T Bank lot. Then if it's good on one side of the road, it should be good on the other side of the road. Apply the same thing as another alternate way of saying, okay, if we can push them back 50 feet, you're gonna have like it's not gonna be like a canyon. The road itself is probably 60 or 70 feet wide there. So it would just get things way back. If a developer wants to do that, it would just give them an alternative means of achieving the effect of getting the building from leering over the street. That's why that kind of got put in there. And at the time, my recollection was they'd heard that being offered, no one objected to it. Now, they might have a different story at the public hearing, but that's why it's in there.
There was a lot of dialogue about the end of the street, between the building that's already got a site plan approval, I think it's called 74 Main Street, and the whole Aroma Joe's building. And one of the issues, of course, with that whole property, of course, is it was subdivided. And, we kept trying to focus a lot on the fact that there was this weird little lot there, right? I mean, the Aroma Joe's Subway lot is very strange. But it was subdivided. It was approved subdivision, and that doesn't mean that with zoning changes that we have, we don't really worry about lot to lot. This is the area that we think is workable for higher stories, and we don't know what in the future might happen to those two lots. Will they work together to build something really cool? There was, at one point, that was reached out between the two property owners. That's a mess. We don't know what's going on with that. But the point is that's the zone. So between the setbacks, the three-story line of the architectural requirements and all of the other things that mixed in there, it seemed like a really reasonable thing that we're moving forward with on the design standards.
So, first, it sounds like it's been a great process. And I understand why the planning board wants to move this into the architectural standards. But I am a little bit confused by the timing, so if you'll permit me. We go to first reading because really what we want to do is have a public hearing. And we'd have a public hearing in probably 2 weeks. So we have a zoning change here that the public hearing, the public feedback will very much be influenced and goes hand in hand with the architectural standards. So time when the architectural standards have been finalized and adopted by the planning board. Otherwise, I think we're doing a disservice to residents who are going to be looking at the 5-story zoning and basically coming in and complaining that, they haven't had time or the architectural standards haven't been finished. So from my standpoint, that's a one meeting delay, maybe 2 if you guys need to have a second public hearing. The town owns the biggest lot. We are not in active discussions with any developer about developing the lot or selling it. My understanding is M&T Bank at the moment is happy being M&T Bank. We need to move this forward and get it done, but I'm afraid that we're going to end up in the same situation that happened this past summer, that we're going to push it through, and because we didn't get everything synced up, it's just going to end up taking us more time in the end. And I personally would recommend, just postponing going to first reading and just let these two things sync up a little bit better.
You're saying the architectural standards
Yes.
for this?
Yeah.
Does that make sense from the planning board representatives? Or do you
Well-
want to say something, Mr. Rasmussen?
So on the 13th, next week, we're going to have the architectural standards finalized. So by the time you have a public hearing, those segments, parts of the architectural standards that all deal with the fifth story will be on the books.
Well, I'm
That's what
sorry,
we're
I heard
planning.
somebody say that based on the public hearing and some questions come up, you might have to schedule another one. And if it is,
No, it was the reverse.
I'm sorry, I heard somebody say that there might be a need for a second public hearing, and,
No, I don't, no.
well, if people...
I think what we were trying to do is make sure that the documents were available for the town council for the public hearing for the 5 stories.
So that would be this Wednesday?
The 13th.
No, next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Okay, so that means... the
Michael
pub-
thought there was,
that means the
mentioned there
pub-
was
That
one.
means the public has 5 days to digest the final architectural standards before we go to public hearing. That is just not the intent and the reason we do public hearings, for like transparency and public input. And I also think that if we sync them up, we're going to go ahead and get this through, but if we do it this way, I think we're setting ourselves up for problems. I'd rather wait one meeting and...
Well, I just had a question.
Maybe.
At the public hearing, will the planning board then have to schedule another public hearing before it can adopt those changes?
Yes,
It's a
Michael's saying
substantive
yes.
change.
Yeah, the ballot, if we decided we were going to do something with regards to having the enforcement from Ballard Street, then that would require another public hearing.
Can I say about Ballard Street, there was a pretty big lawsuit between the two, between 72 Main Street and 74 Main Street, and Ballard Street was critical to the resolution of that, and that the so-called Aroma Joe's property does in fact front on Ballard Street. You can see Main Street from it, so it's, despite what I've heard tonight about, oh, it's on Main Street, it actually isn't on Main Street, and so it would be treated differently. And saying that it really isn't on Main Street, a lawsuit was, or a disagreement was settled over the matter that street still exists and may exist in the future someday.
Just as a question for anybody that knows the answer. So when we were talking about this and looking at it, there's a sliver of the Aroma Joe's lot 61
That actually sits in
that
the...
looks like it to me from this GIS map sits on Main Street. It's short. It might be, I don't know, 50, 60 feet or whatever. But when the language was put in to the architectural standards about the setbacks, and we wound up with a discussion, I wound up with a discussion with Michael, and then it got discussed at the thing, it was put in that this setback applies specifically to whichever elevation faces Main Street, front, side, or rear. So regardless of where the frontage of the lot is, and if it fronts on this, is it Ballard Street?
Ballard Street.
Ballard Street, that's irrelevant because by the language that was put in there, if part of the building is faces Main Street, which it does, even it's only 5 feet, it would have to be set back 20 feet. So you'd have to go back 20 feet from the Main Street side anyway, at a minimum, for that part of the setback. So I think, there are some safeguards already on that lot based upon that, the parenthetical part of 8A.
But you would still have, so the whole side that face Ballard Street, you could have 70 feet of straight up wall
Right. Then
there. I also think the third part of what's currently in there about the 25-foot setback, I think that, and I may be wrong, but it seems like that no longer applies. I can't find any lot that is adjacent to a lot that is zoned for 3 stories. So I think the language needs.
The setbacks apply
Oh,
at least 20 feet where the building faces Main Street and the lot abuts Main Street. And then parenthetically, this setback applies specifically to whichever elevation faces Main Street, front, side, or rear. So I think, from my interpretation of that language, that would apply, that you'd have to fit back at least 20 feet. When you take back that 20 feet from Main Street side and carry that slice parallel to Main Street over to the part on Ballard Street, the frontage on Ballard Street now just got shorter. You're not going to have room there to put up a 5-story building unless it's going to be like 50 feet by 50 feet by 5 stories, which
Just a pencil going
it's,
Remember that the first 4 stories do not have to be set back. So you would have 4 stories up, 20 feet, and your last story like this, and then a long building. So the side that is facing Main Street as you come down it could still be 5 stories straight up.
So this really makes my point is the planning board will get this all
Straightened out, yeah.
figured out, okay? But the thing is we shouldn't go to first reading until it's figured out. Because we can't say to residents, we're gonna have a public hearing, but only 3 business days before the public hearing, we're going to be getting the architectural standards worked out maybe. And let's not make this mistake we made in the summertime. Let's sync them up. Let's know that it adds 1 council meeting, maybe 2. But I think that's really important. I mean, it's what everybody else wants to do, but I can't vote to go to first reading until all this is figured out, and it will be, but.
I agree completely.
Just one update. In your comments, Councilor Lawson, you had noted whether there was an urgency or not with regard to a rezoning for 66 Main Street in terms of whether there were buyers or anything interested in the site. So I will just report that I have had conversation with the Ryan companies, representatives from the Ryan companies, who are interested in moving to crafting a letter of intent regarding that parcel. But that should in no way create any issue with the delay of considering the zoning change for another week, another meeting or 2.
Is that the Ryan company or the company out of West Hartford that is affiliated with Ryan?
I think it will be with the Ryan company, although it's likely the company who they're working with would ultimately take possession of the property.
What do they want to do with it?
So that's all to come, and we're not really at a point to talk that through, but generally speaking, the thought is non-student workforce-focused housing.
How do they do that?
So we'll see, but that's the focus.
So
Current rents in the market may support it.
Yeah.
When we say workforce housing, it doesn't mean necessarily what others may think of as affordable housing.
Still 2,000.
Yeah. Sorry.
I would look forward to maybe talking to you a little bit
Yeah.
more about that.
So I just, in full transparency, I just wanted the public to know that things have shifted slightly in the last 2 weeks. And I have had that conversation with the Ryan company, although there's no urgency and we've got plenty of time to work this through.
Okay, so we'll continue on with roundtable. Do you have anything else to report on the, Councilor Grant?
No, I think at the meeting prior to Wednesday, because that was a working meeting, there
Could I
was.
ask something?
Oh.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Heather, but are we voting on this, or are we just?
We're not technically in new business. We're on council roundtable.
Right, so we're just in the roundtable right now, but it was
Got
brought
it.
up as part of
Yeah,
a fluid
okay.
conversation, so I thought this might be a good opportunity. to talk
I'd like to
about it.
make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:45 p.m.
I'll second that.
Counselor Register.
Chris Register, aye.
Hardin Welsh, aye.
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 Joe Friedman, aye.
I'm Friedrichs, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Jay Goose, aye.
Don't have to go all that long if we don't need to, but we may. So, again, Counselor Grant, do you have any further things?
No,
for
I
the
think the only,
roundtable?
we had the Torrington Orion building was requesting the conversion to apartments of the, one of the buildings at the front, and that went forward. So they were going to go back to the zoning board for either a 5-bedroom apartment or two 2-bedroom apartments, and it's supposed to be going forward to the zoning board. That's all I have.
Okay. Counselor Friedman?
That was an interesting conversation to hear, because by the way, that 5-bedroom apartment goes for $7,000 a month. So we're not getting any workforce housing in there anytime soon. But I look forward to hearing about the sustainability newsletter, which I understand has launched. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that. The next Wednesday, May 13th at 7 p.m., Planning Board Workshop, there will be a presentation from the UNH address those concerns and the decline in biodiversity that we're seeing. I think it's like 80% of the population worldwide is living in light polluted areas. So there should be some interesting information there. And that same evening, there will also be a DBA meeting, and I should ask for a little clarification on this. Will that also be the town gown kickoff? Is the same time and place, or is that a separate meeting?
It's a separate meeting earlier that afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay, the Department of Parks and Recreation meeting was canceled for April 28th. So the next meeting will be on the 26th of May, at which point we do need to elect a chair and vice chair, as the chair's term has come to an end. And they're still looking for a regular member and 3 alternates. Because the meeting didn't happen on the 28th, the rink report will probably be coming at the May meeting. The Tri-Region Economic Development stakeholders had a Zoom meeting on the 28th, and it was essentially a roundtable of community economic development, different communities reporting. You may say something later about that. But Administrator Selig and I were both on that call. The Durham Business Association meeting next on the 13th, a week from Wednesday. And the Strategy Committee for Economic Development of the SRPC had their second to last meeting, more editing, refinement of goals. The final meeting will be on May 29th, at which point it's expected to those goals for 2026 through 2030 will be published as a guideline. And that's what I had.
I'll pass since we kind of already covered the.
Okay. Councilor Lawson?
So we completed the parking survey. 2,200 data records were recorded over 3 weeks. So I want to thank the parking enforcement staff for collecting the data, and also to Sandra Herbert for volunteering. She was back in town. She used to be head of parking enforcement. So I've entered all the data at this point, and I'm now coding to summarize it based on the time of day, the parking type, such as downtown, short-term, permit parking, things like that. Also a lot of error checking, since there's 2,200 data samples. I will say that some of it is very interesting, and I hope it ends up being valuable. I'll eventually get it all written up in a report, and if it's of interest, the council may want, a presentation about it. The Energy Committee will be meeting tomorrow night. One of the things on the agenda is talking about the CPACER program. Todd, I saw you were making comments. I was also on that webinar. I'm curious about your thoughts, even if you could share them briefly tonight, because I walked away with the impression that the program was more manageable than I thought it would be for a town to implement. And some of the things that I perceived as risks, I think they've really negated. And I also think the program could be of interest to even new developers coming into the.
York District Commission meets on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. We haven't had a meeting since our last meeting.
Okie doke. I'm going to try to blow through these fast, but I am on 4 different panels here. So first off, Oyster River School Board, they last met 15 April, have not really met since you guys last met. They did have a finance meeting, but that wasn't necessarily a school board meeting. Teacher workshop on 22 May, just to be aware of for the public. And the last day of school is officially 16 June, so the munchkins will be running around. Next meeting will be this Wednesday, 6 May, 7 p.m. in the Mohammed Cafeteria. For IMAC, they last met 15 April. The Durham Sustainability Newsletter. Has it been released to the public or is it still pending? Do you know?
It's pending. I think we have 66 people who've signed up from the Friday updates.
Yeah, awesome. So the way you can sign up is you go on the Friday updates or go on to the IMAC website and you can input your email address and your name, and then they'll send you the newsletter once it gets done. This is a brainchild of Julie Kelly and I think Nell Nil, but it has been a collaboration across the boards and bureaus of the town, and I really appreciate of it. We have Conservation Commission in here, we have Land Stewardship Subcommittee in here, Energy Committee and Parks and Rec, Wagon Hill Community Gardens submitted stuff, as well as the Durham Public Library. Just a good way to get a bigger snapshot on what's going on in your community and how to be informed of things. I think it's a very useful tool. Anything that flattens out the difference between what Brain Trust has and what the people on the ground are trying to do. That's awesome. For
how often will it come out?
Quarterly?
Yeah, quarterly.
I think we're going to fill it out, but yes. During the last IMAC meeting, DPW and IMAC invited Casella to talk through our transition between Durham curbside and Casella curbside. We discussed the frequency of pickup, and something that needs to be regurgitated a couple times is it's going to be commingled and paper products all in the same container once every 2 weeks. And we can only keep it in the size container that you will be issued by Casella. This is going to be an automated pickup, which means you can't have them too far from the curbside and you can't have them too close together because the machines are going to be picking them up and putting them away. We talked through that it's going to be less controlled of a schedule, meaning we're going to have our stuff on the block by 7 a.m. the day of pickup, or it might get left behind or it might not get grabbed. We also talked about the importance of mitigating trash blowout from the trucks by bagging your trash fully and when you put it in the trash can. These are all tidbits passed on from Casella and reinforced by DPW.
Excuse me, Council Register, does that mean you have to bag your recyclables?
No, that's a great question. I apologize for the confusion. You do not have to bag your recyclables, though they did recommend the brown biodegradable, the cardboard bags for bagging your stuff if you wanted. But no, because then if you bag it in plastic, it really undoes the whole process. Additionally, mentioned composting, just in the idea of compost curbside, not a service currently with anybody in New England, particularly outside of Vermont anyway, but they're pushing the demand. As well as burn permits is coming. If you haven't already put in for your burn permit, $5 online, knock your burn permit out. Again, another community thing that I think is important is there's the trash day. The local Cub Scout or Boy Scout Troop Part 154 on 9 May, so this weekend, 10 to 2, they're going to be rocking around town picking up trash for beautifying our community. Looking for volunteers and anybody that's interested in doing that type of stuff. I think it's great. SRPC I attended on whenever it was, but it was before the last council meeting, but there was some interesting highlights that I wanted to pass along. For one, I didn't know this, but there's a snapshot profile for Durham on the SRPC's website that has a significant amount of demographic data and interesting information. They update it annually. You can go to the SRPC's website, click on Our Communities, click on Durham, and you can get a really detailed breakdown of each community within Stratford County. I think it's fairly interesting and helps inform decisions. Additionally, they had a presentation by a group from NYU that had done a similar study or similar style where they use students to get some good information on childcare, developmental childcare stuff. They identified there's a significant gap between services and workers with childcare, and the 4 recommendations for improvement were: 1, reduce the regulatory barriers, which means using zoning, and apparently there is care is supposed to be permitted by right, not by conditional use, and I think there was concern that most counties in New Hampshire had not abided by HB 1567, which was approved a couple years ago. I'm just passing the word along, but they recommended a model zoning ordinance to help reduce the regulatory barriers. 2, improving access to startup capital, which is through grants and stuff like that. 3, resource guide to help people access those resources. And 4, the need for human help for providers helping people navigate. And I thought those were all reasonably put together. They also mentioned the cost of public transit is going to continue to rise. Their buses particularly are up in their fare tax as things or fare costs as things continue to be more challenging. Their next meeting is going to be on 15 May, Friday. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Representative. All right, and then some community-based notes real quick. May 8th, so this week, blood drive, Durham Evangelicals, 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. I don't think they take walk-ins, so you need to make sure you register appointment, but I think it's something to help out your community members. As well as June 6th, D-Day in June, 6.8 miles to end 68 hours of hunger for kids. It's put on by 4-H. It'll be out at the Whitmore Center from 10 to 2. I'm going to try to make it out there, and I would encourage folks to be a part of that as well. And my final comments before I push it over to the administrator here is to the residents, as we've been working through particularly the goals and the budget concerns. I'm really grateful for the amount of diligent time and thought that's been going into this stuff. We've obviously got a slew of emails. I think I have 1,000 emails in my inbox every freaking week, it feels like. But it's refreshing to have effortful, deliberate perspective on the things that are going on in town. It shows you care. It's good to get buy-in. It's good to get people's diversification of thought. It's a challenging job to keep up with what's going on in Durham. It's a challenging job in the world. I mean, I feel like I'm a full-time volunteer going to different boards and committees, and I still don't know what the hell's going on half the time. And so I'm grateful for all of the residents that are showing an interest, are communicating their needs, and trying to problem solve. We have community members that care to attend and want to shape a prosperous and productive Durham together, and I absolutely love to see folks paying attention and wanting to learn more on how to help out. So hey, keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, of course.
Yeah, do you want me to take over the land steward?
We're going to talk about that.
Are we going to talk about that? May I say something?
Yes, of course, of course.
I think the planning board is coming up with the discussion on the owner-occupied on one side of a ADU at the next meeting, right? I'd like to realize that I have a particular bias about neighborhoods, and you may have gotten a letter today from a couple on Mill Road talking about the problems they have with their activity and noise. We have it over by us. I have a friend of mine who told me that they have a young couple at the end of the street by Davis Avenue talking about possibly moving. They've only been there a short time because of the problems on Edgewood Road over by Stratford. And that, not to say that one of these things with the owner occupied on one part of a house with an ADU would solve all those problems, but it's just looking forward, and I'm hoping that the planning board will take that seriously and bring it to the town council, because everybody I've talked to in the neighborhoods thinks it's a good idea. But I'm also planning on having our deputy chief come and talk to us with some of those people who are having the complaints and kind of tell us what we can do. I know it doesn't sound like a lot when you look at this survey, but for those people that are impacted, it is a very big deal. A very big deal. But it's changed from nighttime stuff to a lot of day drinking. And that's not part of our noise ordinance. So it's, how do we deal with it? So, thank you.
All right, UNH graduation is scheduled for May 16th. In terms of the concept of charging for parking at Wagon Hill Farm, the working concept we are moving forward with at this point is to recognize Durham, Lee, and Madbury resident stickers as part of the program, and to require the use of Park Mobile and the app for individuals without those stickers from away to use the parking there. And police is going to develop an ordinance on that basis and pricing to bring to the council. So you can look forward to that in the coming month or so.
How are they going to police it, Todd? And how often are they going to be policing that?
Well, that's, I would hold that off until we get to the topic.
Okay.
This was a very busy weekend for Durham Police with off-campus student activity, as Councilor Goose has noted just now. There was a party and very loud atmosphere with a lot of trash and challenging behavior on Madbury Road, Mill Road, and throughout the downtown. Just to note that the police were adequately staffed. Almost all of our officers were working during Derby Day, the day of the Kentucky Derby on Saturday. We had New Hampshire State Troopers present, Stratford County Sheriff's officers assisted. We don't believe tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo, we believe it should be contained. So that's what our hope is. And we will have officers around to the extent it's not. As noted earlier, DCAT coordinator Craig Stevens has notified us he's going to fully retire on June 25th, 2026. This does present a challenge as we only budgeted for a part-time position. And so we're going to need to look at how to address that, whether there's an opportunity to reallocate or not. And so more to come.
Is there the possibility of trying to join forces with an adjacent municipality like we're doing with our finance person? Or for the code enforcement officer, kind of split, full-time position, but split between two towns?
I think that's unlikely, but certainly not off the table. So I'm going to be looking at what's possible, what's
I
viable.
will say that I've been in contact with a very nice young man up on Edgewood Road who has been very responsive, cut his base down by a third, which makes us being able to live in our family room reasonably. He did say they are having a inflatable slide party tomorrow, not wearing sombreros because the university discourages that, but it will be a party, so people should be aware.
Next, we have upcoming vacancy. Our longtime town planner, Michael Barrett, will be retiring at the end of November. And so I've sent a note to the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Heritage Historic District Commission asking for a representative from each of those boards to participate as part of the selection process. Ed Friedrichs has graciously offered to participate, which I think would be great based upon your background. And I didn't know whether Heather and or Michael would have an interest in participating as the council rep to the Planning Board.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. In terms of the business manager selection process, the soft deadline for applications was this morning at 8 a.m. My understanding is we had 13 responses. So we'll see whether or not some of those are qualified, and if so, we'll bring a slate in for initial vetting. Councilor Lawson reported on the C-PACER program, and I agree. The forum that we both attended, put on by the Municipal Association, Clean Energy New Hampshire, and the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority was very helpful. So we'll see what the next steps are. Planning for the farmers market in Durham is underway. It's going to be at the M&T Bank this week, so stay tuned for information. And in terms of the Mill Pond Dam on the Oyster River and removal, I just want to note that we had anticipated the possibility and likelihood, in fact, that we might lose the $1.3 million in NOAA funding. And so the council appropriated $900,000 as part of the approved capital improvement program and capital budget for 2026. So that money is intact and already factored into our projections for 2028. That's when bonding would potentially hit. So our hope was we might be able to get the funds, and if so, we wouldn't have needed that $900,000. But just to note, although we lost $1.3 million, which was the second slug of the larger NOAA grant, we've already been allocated $1.9 million that, for the project. And we were hopeful there'd be a third installment as well, which looks less likely at this point in time. We've not received a formal letter from NOAA, so it was just a verbal conversation. So I've been in touch with Senator Shaheen's office, and they're following up on it. So we'll see where that stands. And that's the last thing, given the time. Yes.
All right. So there is, first reading is on the agenda, and it was suggested that maybe we wait, maybe we go forward. Does anybody have any comments of how they want to move forward on?
Yeah, I like the idea of holding it until we get the architectural standards set. I think part of the issue we've had with developers is not knowing exactly what they're supposed to do when they come here. And I think it would be good to, as well as for people in the town, to know what they're talking about when they come to the public hearing. So I think that's actually a pretty good process to, in the future, when we try and change an ordinance, if there's architectural standards that go with it, if those are presented at the same time.
And it would seem to me that there's enough of an issue on 72 and 74 Main Street that it would be just, we'd be doing this again. So I would recommend that we also put this off until the planning board finishes what they're doing on these particular lots. Seems consensus on that then? All right, then we'll move on and talk about committees. And this was originally on the April 20th agenda, and we'd like to bring it forward as was suggested earlier in the meeting. And there are a couple things going on. Councilor Lawson has some things to say about it, and Councilor Goose kindly volunteered also on land stewardship. And so we can talk about both of those things now.
Yeah, from my perspective, that I really think it's for M, Councilor Goose and myself, in terms of three committees. We have agriculture that needs to be covered, the Energy Committee, and the land stewardship.
And actually Human Rights Commission too, with Councilor Vogt leaving, so there's a fourth.
Yeah.
I'm going to add another curveball in here that Neil Slepian asked me to join the Land Stewardship Subcommittee. I haven't agreed to it because I didn't want to overstep the council authorities, nor did I know what the interest of the new councilor or the recurring council was going to be, but just something to put out there as well.
Okay.
So,
do you want to, and Councilor Friedrichs, there's not going to be an Economic Development Commission at this point, and so I don't know if you've thought about, or given any thought about the Agriculture Commission, the Energy Commission, which you've had some experience with, and whether you'd be willing to pick up one of those committees.
I think the Ag Committee, given that it meets on Monday evenings, would probably be the most straightforward right now.
And by the way, I don't have to have the Land Steward Committee. Agriculture Committee might work well too, because my daughter's a farmer. You know,
yeah,
at Tuckaway Farm, so maybe that would be a better suit for me. The Agriculture Committee.
I see.
Yeah.
so that would require then Curtis taking the land stewardship.
I'm not opposed.
I can't do that if it's still on Wednesday mornings.
Yeah, it's 8:30 Wednesday mornings, every
And
other.
it tends to run too long, so. I mean, in terms of just fitting in a full workday around that.
And the Energy Committee, when does that meet generally?
That means on Tuesday, but
Tuesday.
First Tuesday of the month.
yeah, I just thought there needed to be some distribution, so,
Sure.
you know, I would continue with the Energy Committee.
And is anybody interested in the Human Rights Commission?
But that does not have a regularly scheduled
Correct.
time.
I'll do that. I did it, did for a lot when I was a chair. I was in every one of those, so sure.
Yeah, so instead of agriculture?
Whatever it may be.
Okay.
Instead of agriculture?
Or both.
Instead of agriculture?
No, both. I can do
It's
both.
both.
Okay,
Okay. I can
have
are you
both.
okay?
I guess, yeah, that leaves me
Okay.
on the cemetery committee,
Which is the best.
and the DBA, representing along with Chair Friedman, is that correct?
Yeah, just,
It's not a town committee, but it's a,
It could be, definitely, it could be.
May I request an alternate for land stewardship as well, just to, because I have 6 committees.
do they have an alternate from the
I don't
council?
think so.
No, I thought Curtis was doing land stewardship. Who
I volunteered to take primary, but just in case I'm missing stuff.
who was assigned for that? Forgotten.
Counselor Vogt was
Counselor Vogt.
there, yeah.
Oh, so could Curtis take that?
Yes, but is there an alternate that I could work with, that if I can't make it for whatever?
So we would need to
Thank you,
do,
Courtney. I appreciate it.
wait a second. We would need to do a resolution
Yeah, there's,
to put an alternate.
Oh, okay, well, let's not add the weight. Jesus,
Yeah.
I ain't trying to do that.
And do we need a resolution to make these appointments
No.
tonight?
But if you're going to change the structure of the Land Stewardship Committee and have an alternate council rep, then that has to be.
I'm just gonna call you.
Yeah. Just hang out.
and I also had included Curtis council register on the town gown group that we're starting up, if that
Right.
works. And
Not
you were going to
opposed.
be the rep to the DBA.
Okay.
Okay. So could I read back what I've
Please
written
do,
down?
yes.
So I've got Councilor Friedrichs is the council rep on the cemetery committee. Councilor Guz, the council rep on the agricultural commission and human rights commission.
Yes.
Council register to take the land stewardship subcommittee appointment. Councilor Lawson continues on the energy committee. Councilor Friedrichs will continue as a rep to the Durham Business Association. And Councilor Register to be the rep on the Town Gown Group,
Roger.
Town Gown Collaborative.
Okay.
So someone should move and second that.
Second, or I move, as so moved, excuse me.
Is the slate described by Administrator Selig? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Counselor Goose. Okay.
Heather Grant, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Mike Clerman, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Hardin Welsh, aye.
Curtis Register, aye. Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor with your hands?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Very good.
Good job, Jay.